Hey everyone, welcome back. Chapters 1421 through 1440 of the previous episode. Qin Mu, accompanied by 4 expert blade masters, infiltrates the ancestral court to reach the execution stage, hoping to master its blade path. During their journey, they face off against the powerful Yin Tianzi and navigate the dangerous politics of the celestial heavens. Upon reaching the execution stage, they engage in a perilous battle against its manifestations, ultimately integrating their blade skills to reach the 30th heaven of Dao realm. The story culminates as they prepare for the imminent conflict in the Xuandu realm, aiming to save the Heavenly Duke. If possible, you can support me via PayPal or become a channel member to help me keep this channel running. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story of Tales of Herding Gods audio series. Chapter 1441 Chapter 1, 436, Bury the Hatchet 3rd Update. Di Qing is a typical demigod. Tianshu's divine consciousness fluctuated, he whispered to Qin Mu. In the past, many demigods had this kind of thinking. They were arrogant and looked down on everything. Back then, when founding Emperor Era's Heavenly Duke ordered the demigods of Xiandu to help us, we had also put up with his and the other gods of Xiandu's strange temperaments. Qin Mu understood this feeling very well. The demigods had been feeding on the other postnatal races since the beginning of the Dragon Han era. When it came to the Dragon Han era, the hierarchy was strict, and the demigods, as a race that was second only to the ancient gods, were even more superior. Furthermore, they were born high and mighty, and they had a natural sense of superiority over the people of the lower levels. Di Qing should have been a demigod born after the ancestor god king, so he had developed this temperament. He sized up Di Qing and could see the shadow of the Heavenly Duke from his body. Di Qing had less similarities with Di Yue except for his lips and nose bridge. Di Qing's gaze swept past Qin Mu and the rest. When he saw that the 4 of them were all covered, he couldn't help frowning. Tianshu smiled. The identities of these 4 brothers are special, so they can't show their faces. If it was during normal times, they would definitely be treated as enemies when they enter Xiandu with their faces covered. Now that there's Heavenly Dao to distinguish between friend and foe, these 4 should be friends, Di Qing said with a smile. Qin Mu looked around and saw many children of demigods running around the city. He frowned and said, Di Qing, why are there still women and children in Tianfang City? All of you should immediately send the children to the origin world. Tianfang City can't take it at all. Leaving the women and children behind is just sending them to their deaths. It's impossible for Tianfang City to be broken through. The god and devil army of the Heaven Court can't even reach the city gates. The king frowned. The more people gathered in the city, the stronger the Heavenly Dao will be. Children, women, and children staying in the city will strengthen the power of the Heavenly Dao even more. You don't know the direction of the Heavenly Dao, so I won't argue with you. But next time, don't spout nonsense and mess up our army's morale. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless in the military law. He looked at Tianshu and his expression sank. Heavenly King of Nether Capital, it's good that you're here to help, but you'd better restrain your friends and not mess up our army's morale. Tianshu secretly tugged at Qin Mu's lapels and laughed. Don't worry, we won't talk nonsense anymore. We're still waiting for you to share the credit with us. However, is it really useful for women and children to gather in the city? The seriousness on Di Qing's face vanished. This is the subtlety of Heavenly Dao of Xiandu, he said with a smile. The present is different from the past. Now that Heavenly Dao is protecting Xiandu, the more living beings there are, the stronger Heavenly Dao will be. The reason why the power of Heavenly Dao in our Heaven Square city is so strong is because there are many gods and devils of Xuandu gathered here. However, the number of gods and devils is still small, so the commoners of Xuandu have to gather here as well. He looked at Qin Mu and the rest and said, those who can live in Xuandu are all demigod races. There are divine kingdoms everywhere here, so there aren't any postnatal living beings like humans. Tianshu smiled apologetically. Yes, we humans and other postnatal creatures aren't fit to live in Xiandu. You've said it before. Di Qing immediately said, that's not what I meant, but in order to ensure the purity of Xiandu's bloodline, postnatal creatures are forbidden to enter Xiandu. It's not discriminating against you. Now, even though there are many demigods in Tianfang City, there aren't enough. That's why I've ordered the Sun Guardians, Moon Guardians, and Star Sovereign to migrate more demigods from all over the heavens to guard Tianfang and strengthen the power of heavenly Tao. Tianshu was flabbergasted and Qin Mu, Butcher and the rest also frowned. The king laughed loudly. At that time, Tianfang City will become a fortress that can subdue Heavenly Venerate, and let Heavenly Venerate bequeath his head. He was 100 times more confident and gave pointers to the world. Back then, the heavens ordered us to descend to the lower realm to support the human race and the other postnatal races. Actually, I've always been a little unhappy. Without relying on the power of your postnatal races, just the power of my Xiandu is enough to look down on the heavens and stand on equal footing with the heavenly court. Back then, I was also very happy that the heavenly king could come to help. Qin Mu was silent for a moment before saying, Di Qing, are you really not going to consider moving away these women and children? If Tianfang City falls, these lives. Di Qing flew into a rage and his expression changed. He shouted to his left and right, bring this person who has disturbed the morale of our army up to the city wall and behead him for public display. Tianshu quickly hugged him and smiled apologetically. Calm down, calm down. We are here to help. How can we kill our allies as a sacrifice? Di Qing snorted and struggled free from him. He said calmly, our Xiandu army is strong and strong. We have the protection of the heavenly axiom. The heavenly axiom forms a treasure to protect the God City. We do not need your help. The 4 or 5 of you are covered in masks and do not dare to show your faces. It is neither a man nor a woman. Just watch. Heavenly King, don't worry. I will share some of the credit with you if we win. Suddenly, the sound of war drums could be heard. Di Qing led everyone and left in a hurry. The butcher sighed and said in a desolate voice, we came here full of enthusiasm. We were not scared by the enemy, but we were doused with cold water by the general of Xuandu. Heavenly Blade, calm down. Di Qing had helped a lot during the founding emperor era. The founding emperor set up the positions of the sun and moon guards in the various heavens to learn Xuandu's system. Tianshu was helpless against Di Qing, but when they came to help us back then, we were the ones doing the hard work. They only gave us pointers and wanted to bully us. The founding emperor was also patient. Later on, he couldn't take it anymore and fell out. In a fit of anger, Di Qing led all the demigods back to Xiandu and said that without their help, your founding emperor would never be able to develop into a strong country in the Yuan world. He smiled faintly. After a few hundred years, the founding emperor kingdom became the overlord of the Yuan world in a single leap. The Duke of Heaven sent him over again. However, his temper hasn't changed. He's very arrogant towards everyone in the founding emperor heavenly court. Although he's arrogant, he's not bad-hearted. His strength is also extremely strong. He spent his entire life comprehending the heavenly Tao and comprehended 3 to 5 different heavenly Tao emperor throne techniques. The heavenly Tao here is so prosperous, he might really be able to block heavenly Venerate. Qin Mu shook his head and said, if heavenly Tao was really that strong, why would Heavenly Duke have to turn into Heavenly Venerate Hong to personally provoke this massacre against Heavenly Duke in Xiandu? When Tianshu, Butcher, and the rest heard this, their hair stood on end as they looked at him in horror. Qin Mu sighed. Heavenly Duke can't wait to get rid of the fetters of Heavenly Tao, and Heavenly Venerate Hong is his reincarnation. For this purpose, Heavenly Venerate Hong didn't hesitate to sacrifice Heavenly Duke and Heavenly Tao. He also didn't hesitate to sacrifice everything in Xiandu, including the demigods here, the women and children here, and even his descendants. Heavenly Venerate Hong will definitely be the one to break through Heaven Square City. Shahuali said bitterly. So in the end, it was Heavenly Duke beating Heavenly Duke himself. Heavenly Venerate Mu. Then why do we have to sacrifice our lives to save Heavenly Duke? He was incomparably resentful as he gritted his teeth. His voice came out from the gaps between his teeth. The reason why we came, the reason why you mentioned it, and why we chatted and laughed all the way here, is because we feel that Heavenly Duke must be saved. Saving Heavenly Duke is saving eternal peace. Even if we die in Mystic City, it's still a worthy death. Yet unexpectedly, it turns out that Heavenly Duke is playing house alone. Let him die. Tianshu and Luo Wushuang were silent and didn't say anything. Butcher wanted to say something, but he stopped himself and sighed. Heavenly Duke Hong is Heavenly Duke, but Heavenly Duke Hong isn't. Qin Mu said, Heavenly Duke Hong is only the reincarnation of a soul of Heavenly Duke that lives on Great Hong's body. He's already 10 Heavenly Dukes. However, Heavenly Duke isn't Heavenly Duke Hong. Heavenly Duke has the heart of Heavenly Tao, but Heavenly Duke Hong doesn't. What we want to save is Heavenly Duke who has the heart of Heavenly Tao. Saving him is saving eternal peace. Zhehuali, we were enemies in the past, and you aren't from eternal peace. This trip is dangerous, so I lied to all of you before and didn't tell you about Heavenly Duke Hong's identity. If all of you want to leave, I won't stop you. Zhehuali panted heavily and stared at him fiercely. Demon Blade and Dragon Tooth also stared at Qin Mu fiercely. Who? Zhehuali turned around, and his clothes fluttered in the wind as he walked out. As he walked, his footsteps gradually slowed down. After a moment, he stopped and sat on a stone block by the side of the road. He looked over and raised his chin. Are you really not going to keep me?
Qin Mu smiled.
Zhehuali jumped down from the stone block and ran back. I'm an eternal peace person, half human, half demon, half god, half devil. Zhehuali smiled, he chuckled. I'm no longer a person of the heavenly court. In the heavenly court, in the heavens where I was born, I'm a bastard. Only in eternal peace did I find my human dignity. Cult Master Qin, heavenly venerate Mu. Eternal peace isn't your eternal peace. I, Demon Blade Zhehuali, also have a share in eternal peace. Qin Mu laughed loudly and raised his palm. Pa, the two of them clasped their hands together in the air. I also have a share. Butcher stretched out his hand to cover their hands and smiled. I also have a share in eternal peace. Luo Wushuang's hand covered their hands and added, I've offended 2 heavenly venerates, so I have nowhere to go. Only eternal peace can take me in. Tianshu also stretched out his hand and smiled. Even though I'm not an eternal peace person, I'm still considered half an eternal peace person. When I was trapped in Imperial Citadel's Divine Blade, Great Ruins was to the west of Imperial Citadel and Eternal Peace was to the east, so I'm considered half an eternal peace person. The 5 of them laughed out loud and put the past differences behind them. Di Qing had won another battle, so it was even easier to win this battle. It was the army under Heavenly Venerate Lang, who had attacked Tianfang City. He had led his army and defeated them, killing tens of thousands of gods and devils. Heavenly Venerate Lang's eldest disciple had been incited by Qin Mu to betray him, and no one knew where he had fled to. The disciples of Heavenly Venerate Lang had suffered heavy casualties from Qin Mu, so compared to the other Heavenly Venerates, the forces under him were weaker. However, he was still the leader of the demigods, and all the demigods in the myriad worlds respected him as their divine emperor. Thus, there were many strong practitioners from the various races of the demigods in his army. However, they were an army that had been gathered in a hurry. In front of Tianfang City, the army of Divine Emperor Lang Xian had suffered heavy casualties. The drums outside the city shook, and they greatly increased the battle strength of the city guards. They charged into the enemy's formation, but it was soul-stirring. The gods and devils with low cultivations couldn't withstand it, and their souls shattered, they died an unnatural death. This battle was won with great ease. Di Qing returned from victory and laughed out loud. He was in high spirits, he waved his hand and said, This meritorious service will be recorded by the Hades Heavenly King. It's on him. Men, hold a celebratory feast. I will welcome the Heavenly King and celebrate this meritorious service. Tianshu could not decline and could only let him do it. After more than 10 days, the Milky Way Navy cleared the surrounding galaxies and finally arrived in front of Tianfang City. There were 1,000,000 soldiers and they were eyeing the city covetously. Di Qing did not take it to heart at all, because over the past 10 days, many stars had already migrated to the vicinity of Tianfang City. Tianfang City was vast, and its surroundings were filled with stars of all sizes. These stars were all planets with life. On these stars were the citizens of the various demigod races, and there were hundreds of millions of lives. After these stars were migrated over, the density of the heavenly Tao in Tianfang City was so dense that the heavenly Tao floating above the city was no longer as simple as taking form. Instead, it had become corporeal. In a short span of 10 days, the heavenly bell, heavenly fire, heavenly thunder, heavenly dawn, heavenly plate, heavenly well, heavenly drum, heavenly dimension, heavenly domain, and other heavenly Tao soldiers took form. The majesty of the heavenly Tao suppressed the four directions. Even the heavenly court's army was suppressed by the power of the heavenly Tao. Not only that, more stars from Xuandu were moved over. Other heavenly Tao soldiers were also being formed. Of the 49 heavenly Tao, only the heavenly plane had yet to take form. If the heavenly outline was formed, all 49 heavenly Tao soldiers would be gathered. This was definitely a great power. The gods and devils in the city also felt the support of the heavenly Tao, which made their magic power even more vigorous and stronger. Regardless of whether it was divine arts or divine weapons, their power had increased by a huge margin. Qin Mu, Butcher, and the rest also felt that the power of the heavenly Tao had made their abilities stronger, and their Tao hearts also became more transparent. However, the more it was like this, the more worried they became. There were too many living beings and gods of Xiandu gathered in Tianfang City, and the stars were already filled with people. The more they gathered here, the more dangerous it would be. When Heavenly Venerate made his move, these living beings would probably be reduced to dust. Outside the city, even more Heavenly Court's army surged over, and they had already surrounded Tianfang Divine City until it was impenetrable. The Heavenly Court's army brought the four emperors' divine weapons and attacked a few more times. However, even the four emperors' divine weapons were defeated in front of Tianfang City. The first celestial master Shang Pingyin, the second celestial master Meng Yungue, and the others mobilized their armies in an attempt to take down Tianfang City. However, they lost many soldiers and generals, making it difficult for them to fight against the might of the heavenly Tao weapons. There were also the Azure Emperor of the East and the White Emperor of the West who led their armies to attack. However, they were also defeated. The White Emperor and the Azure Emperor were even heavily injured. The 5 Emperor thrones and 5 Emperor inner thrones of the Heaven Court also moved out. There were also 10 guards of the Heaven Court who rushed over. They fought in formation, but they were still unable to break through Tianfang City. They were even unable to get close to the city gates. These days Di Qing had won dozens of battles in a row, and he couldn't contain his joy. It was just that with Heaven Square City being trapped, there weren't any more celestial capital moving over. The last Tao soldier, the heavenly program, couldn't be formed, which made him feel a little regretful. Heavenly Tao soldiers are famous throughout the world in this battle. If all 49 Tao soldiers were to come out, killing Heavenly Venerate wouldn't be a problem, he said to Qin Mu and the rest. Outside the city, green birds suddenly flapped their wings and flew over from the enemy camp, falling into the Heavenly Court's camp. Welcome, Heavenly Veneraton. The generals of the Heavenly Court all went forward to welcome him and kowtowed one after another, begging for forgiveness. We are all useless and have been tripped up by Tianfang City. We have never been able to break through the city and wipe out the rebels. Please punish us, Heavenly Venerate. Heavenly Veneraton chuckled. It's just a small matter. There's no need to beg for forgiveness. Wait for me to take a look at the scene on the other side. He came to the front of the array and sized up Tianfang City. Then he looked at the 48 heavenly Tao weapons floating above the city and listened attentively to the Tao sounds of the heavenly Tao. He smiled and said, "What a good treasure." The ancestor God King had refined a heavenly Tao treasure and combined it with the 49 heavenly Tao treasures to form an ever-changing heavenly Tao supreme treasure. Unfortunately, it had been shattered by Supreme Emperor. Although he had refined another set, how could the heavenly Tao treasure he refined be compared to the heavenly Tao treasure he had transformed himself into? Even the heavenly Duke could not refine a good treasure. Only at such a critical moment of life and death could such a treasure be formed. It's enviable. The generals did not dare to say anything more. Heavenly Master Hong asked, "Have the other heavenly venerates arrived?" The generals shook their heads and said, "Not yet. I was held up by Heavenly Master Yu who rebelled against the Heaven Alliance, so I was delayed for a period of time. I thought that I was late, but I did not expect that I would be the first to arrive here." Heavenly Venerate Hong's face was radiant with red light. He smiled and said, "You guys withdraw a part of your forces first and open an opening for the people of Xiandu to enter Tianfang City. When his heavenly Tao weapon matures, I will break it." He was a well-known good man among the 10 heavenly venerates. He did not scold the generals, Nor did he kill a few defeated generals to sacrifice to the banner. This made everyone feel relieved. However, it was hard to understand why Heavenly Venerate Hong asked them to let the rebels of Xuandu gather and form the Heavenly Dao weapons. Heavenly Venerate most likely took a fancy to these 49 Heavenly Dao weapons. He even said that even Heavenly Dukes could not forge such Dao weapons. Meng Yungue said to Shang Pingyin, "If this Dao weapon is formed, I'm afraid that the 49 Heavenly Dao weapons will become one with boundless power. Heavenly Venerate Hong has always disliked fighting with others. Can he break these Dao weapons?" Shang Pingyin said, "Celestial Master Hong is unfathomable. It's not something we can fathom." In the Tianfeng Divine City, Di Qing had been waiting for a long time. However, Celestial Master Hong had yet to attack. On the contrary, the Heavenly Court's camp had opened an opening. It seemed to be used to let the people in the city escape. He was relieved. He smiled and said, "Celestial Master Hong, the incompetent among the 10 Celestial Masters don't dare to fight with Tianfeng City. So they opened an opening in an attempt to let us escape by ourselves and scatter our forces. However, I chose to do the opposite and let more people in." More soldiers and commoners moved over from Xiandu. After more than 10 days, Heavenly Venerate Hong still didn't come to attack, but the Heavenly Order Dao soldiers were finally formed. In Tianfeng City, the might of the Heavenly Dao was flourishing. The might of the Heavenly Dao was vast and there were numerous Heavenly Dao, making the gods, devils and mortals in the city 100 times more spirited and confident. Qin Mu gathered Tian Shu, Butcher and the rest and said, "Heavenly Venerate Hong is going to make a move. He doesn't know that we are in the city, so we will only break one of his arms in this battle and snatch away the Heavenly Order Dao soldiers." "Then what about the mortals in the city?" Zhehuali asked. Qin Mu fell silent for a moment and shook his head. "Protect our lives first. As for the rest," the corners of his eyes twitched, "we'll talk about it in the future." Boom! Suddenly, a violent tremor came from outside the city, and 10,000 paths cried out in unison. Qin Mu and the rest hurriedly raised their heads to take a look, only to see a huge face with white eyebrows and white beard rising up, blocking the sky in front of Heaven Square City and the stars around it. His face was so huge that the suns and stars that revolved around Heaven Square City were as tiny as specks of dust. It was the face of Celestial Master Hong. He had white eyebrows and a white beard. He had a kind face. However, this kind-looking Celestial Master Hong stretched out his big hand and slapped toward Tianfeng City. Di Qing roared angrily and rose into the sky. He shouted, "Celestial Master Hong, Old Man Hong, you finally made your move. It's time for you to see how terrifying the Dao power of the Heavenly Dao is. Children, activate the Heavenly Dao weapons." In the sky above Tianfeng City, the power of the Heavenly Dao weapon was activated one after another. The power of the Heavenly Dao was unleashed to the maximum, as it blasted towards Celestial Master Hong's face. Celestial Master Hong smiled. His smile was like a spring breeze. A loud and clear Dao sound rang out behind his head. It was as if there were 10,000 Dao sounds revolving around him. A huge halo appeared behind his head. One after another they emerged from the halo and formed a great heavenly court. The light rays were hundreds of millions of feet long. Before the Heavenly Dao soldiers that were hurtling towards him could reach his face, their power was wiped out by the power of the heavenly court. Bang! A planet exploded and countless Xiandu creatures on the planet fled and cried. However, in the next moment they turned into dust along with the planet. Bang! 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 The planets around Tianfeng City were annihilated in front of Heavenly Venerate Hong's huge hand. Before Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm fell, the sun had already extinguished, and the moon split open, then shattered into pieces. The earth and mountains shook in Tianfeng City. The impenetrable city walls collapsed one after another, and the buildings were reduced to dust. Only fear remained on Di Qing's face. He raised his head and looked at the huge hand that was pressing down on the Tiandao soldiers. In Tianfeng City, regardless of whether it was the sun or the moon guardian, or the women and children in the city, all they could do was to raise their heads and look at the palm that covered the sky. The palm was getting closer and closer to them, creating a scene that looked like the end of the world. It caused the ground of Tianfeng City to continuously crack, houses to collapse, and lives to be reduced to dust under the great pressure. This indestructible divine city had already cracked under this great power. Like broken porcelain. This power was extremely powerful. Although it was monstrous and gave people a feeling that the great Tao was invincible, this power was so exquisite that it was like the spring wind and rain. It accurately grasped the weaknesses of each heavenly Tao weapon and suppressed them one by one. When did the Heaven Court have such an understanding of the heavenly Tao? The Heaven Court did not have a perfect mapping of the heavenly Duke's body, and did not perfectly turn the heavenly Tao into algebra runes. Even the son of the heavenly Duke, the ancestor God King, could not grasp all the mysteries of the heavenly Tao. Di Qing was terrified. Who was this celestial Master Hong? Even if Celestial Master Hong had the most powerful mana in the world, he could not accurately grasp the weakness of the heavenly Tao soldiers and easily defeat the 49 heavenly Tao soldiers. Di Qing, take them away. Someone shouted at him. Protect these roots of Xuandu and send them away. Di Qing looked at the person who spoke in confusion. He saw 200 to 300 Sun Guardian primordial spirits appear to protect many citizens of Tianfang City, resisting the great pressure coming from the sky. What are you standing there for? The Sun Guardians were pressed down until they vomited blood. They shouted, "Send them away." The citizens of Tianfang City were terrified and uneasy. They looked at him with fear and anticipation. Di Qing opened his mouth but did not say anything. Leave? Where to? Where could they escape to if Celestial Master Hong made a move? Boom! One of the Sun Guardian's immortal soul exploded. Flames burned on its body and soon, it was burned to ashes. More Sun Guardians spat out blood and their immortal souls burned, but they resisted the pressure. Di Qing finally came back to his senses. He rushed down from the sky and rushed towards the Sun Guardians who could not hold on any longer. Do you feel the baleful aura? As Di Qing was rushing over, he suddenly saw Tianshu and the 4 masked men passing by him. The 5 of them ignored him and used a strange footwork to rush into the sky to meet the falling hand. They were not led by Tianshu, the heavenly king of Hades. On the contrary, they were led by the masked young man who contradicted Di Qing. A unique domain had already formed around that young man. The vast ancestral court burst forth and the 4 extreme heavens appeared. Layers of heavenly palaces formed the heavenly court. When Di Qing passed by them, he saw majestic mountains and rivers rising from the ancestral court. Xiandu rose, Hades sank, and the origin wood in the Yuan world rose up, lifting up all the worlds in the universe. It was extremely eye-catching. The one who spoke was also that young man. Celestial Master Hong had made a move, causing countless people to die in Xiandu. The murderous aura that these people emitted when they died was extremely intense. The planets around Tianfang City were destroyed. The resentment of the people who died on the planets fused with Xuandu's heavenly axiom, forming a heavenly axiom that was not among the 49 heavenly axioms. Heavenly demon. Di Qing turned around and looked at the masked young man. He saw that the young man was still calm and composed, forming a strange formation with Tianshu and the others. He said in a deep voice, "Heavenly demon is also a heavenly axiom. It's the 50th type of heavenly axiom. It gathers evil into a blade and absorbs the murderous aura in Tianfang City. It can make our blade path as powerful as the 31st heavenly axiom. In addition to the power of the heavenly Tao, it can make our blade Tao as powerful as the 32nd heaven, or even the 33rd heaven." Di Qing saw the evil energy whistling over. Under the cover of heavenly venerate Hong's huge hand, the evil energy was like a blood dragon, crazily drilling into the bodies of the 5 people. Under the cover of heavenly venerate Hong's huge hand, it's the right time to block his vision. The masked young man said, "We only have one chance. You guys just need to exert your strength. I'll take out the saber. With one saber and one severed hand, we'll take away the Heaven's Path Tao weapons. As for the other Heaven's Path Tao weapons, we'll take them back if we can. If we can't, we'll leave immediately. We won't stay here." Di Qing crossed paths with them. He was at a loss. Who's that young man? He did not have time to think. He had just arrived beside the Sun Guardians and released his dermic powers to protect the citizens of Tianfang City. He shouted and used all his strength. Tianfang City collapsed. A huge piece of land in the Divine City was separated from the Divine City by his dermic powers and flew downwards rapidly. Heavenly Lord Hong has opened up an opening in the Heavenly Court's army. That is our only chance to escape, Di Qing said quickly. Let's leave Xiandu and head to the Yuan world. At that moment, an earth-shattering sound of a blade rang out. Di Qing turned his head to look and could not help but be stunned. In the sky, the 5 tiny figures were emitting an extremely dazzling light. It was a blade light. The blade light that burst out from the depths of the void was extremely dazzling. It resonated with the heavenly Tao of Xiandu, and a blade light tore through the sky and earth as it slashed towards Heavenly Lord Hong's hand. He saw the long saber light and a black line was left in his eyes. He could not see the saber light because the saber light had left a deep wound in the space of Xiandu. This wound had cut through space. It had cut through layers of void. The Tao of the saber rumbled and shook, slashing into the wrist of Celestial Master Hong's palm. Heavenly Fiend beheading Tiangang. Di Qing shook his eyes but still could not see the blade light. However, he saw Celestial Master Hong's huge palm separating from his wrist. A look of shock and anger appeared on Celestial Master Hong's face, which covered half of the sky. The continent flew toward the only gap in the Heavenly Court's army. The Heavenly Court's soldiers immediately moved and gathered toward the gap. Thousands of gods and demons swarmed toward the dilapidated continent. On the continent, the ruins of the Tianfang Divine City were still collapsing. Di Qing hurriedly turned his head back. With a quick glance, he saw that although the 5 figures had cut off Celestial Master Hong's hand, they were shaken and scattered. Their bodies exploded and turned into a bloody mist. The 5 figures crisscrossed under Celestial Master Hong's hand and flew quickly. Soon, they returned to their peak condition and flew away from Celestial Master Hong's falling hand. Heavenly Venerate Hong's huge palm was still falling down, and below it was the Tianfang Divine City. Their target was the Heavenly Dao soldier that was pressed under the palm. However, Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm still contained great power. It pressed down on the Heavenly Dao soldier as it smashed towards the dilapidated Tianfang City. It was about to cover the city together with them. It was about to be destroyed together with the Divine City. Cult Master. Shahuali looked at the ground of the God City that was getting closer and closer, and he shouted sternly, "If we don't leave, it'll be too late." Qin Mu brought them close to Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm and sprinted forward. Suddenly, the domain of his divine treasure reversed, and the 5 of them felt space displace. They realized that they had immediately turned from head to foot, and were stepping on the palm markings of Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm to sprint forward. In front of them were Heavenly Dao soldiers that were filled with astonishing heavenly might. Butcher Luo Wushuang, Tianshu, and Qin Mu stretched their hands out to grab the Heavenly Dao soldiers. Shahuali gritted his teeth and ignored the fact that he was about to crash into Tianfang City. He also stretched his hand out to grab one of the Heavenly Dao soldiers. Boom! Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm came into contact with Tianfang City, and the entire Divine City instantly turned into dust. Following that, the dust crumbled and turned into chaos. Countless gods and commoners evaporated in an instant, and their corporeal bodies and souls vanished without a trace. Just as Heavenly Venerate Hong's palm covered Tianfang City, a dazzling light burst out from between the two. The moment the light lit up, it disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the kind smile on Heavenly Venerate Hong's enormous face turned into surprise and anger. His physique was too big, and the change in his expression seemed to be extremely slow. However, the surprise and anger disappeared. What was left was coldness. Flesh and blood grew crazily on his broken wrist. The thick strands of flesh spread forward crazily. The blood vessels grew forward like flood dragons, and the bones on his hand grew like mountains on the earth. At this moment, Celestial Master Hong's face frowned again. He felt that something was strange. He used the Path of Destiny to repair the damage to his body. The Path of Destiny consumed his magic power. Logically speaking, the magic power consumed by his realm should be recovered soon. However, at that moment, he didn't feel that his magic power had the slightest tendency to recover. He only felt as if there was an invisible lock in his body. It was an extremely complicated chain that locked his magic power layer by layer, preventing him from recovering his cultivation. Just as he thought of this, he suddenly felt a piercing pain in his heart. In a trance, Heavenly Venerate Hong felt as if he had fallen into an endless deep well, and was looking up at the sky at the mouth of the well. This feeling was somewhat similar to when he had fallen out with Qin Mu at the Jade Lake before the meeting of the Heaven Alliance. However, this strange feeling quickly disappeared. The cultivation he had expended was insignificant to him, and was only a drop in the ocean. His palm recovered very quickly and clenched heavily. Below him the broken hand exploded and heavenly Dao weapons flew out one after another, landing on his new palm. 5 heavenly Dao weapons are missing. The most important heavenly Dao weapons have been stolen. Heavenly Venerate Hong was looking down at the Tianfang Divine City. He slowly raised his head and saw that the broken continent of Tianfang City had broken out of the encirclement of the Heavenly Court's army under Di Qing's protection and was escaping. At the edge of the continent, rays of light appeared. 5 masked figures rushed out from the rays of light and only stopped after they had rushed for dozens of miles. Their bodies exploded and their blood flowed back. They were restrained by a strange power, so they weren't hurt at all. The 5 heavenly Dao soldiers that were lost were caught by these 5 people. Celestial Master Mu, you still don't understand what it means to be lucky when you respond to it, and to be dangerous when you respond to it. You cut off one of my hands and stole my Dao soldiers. It seems that there's no room for negotiation between us. Heavenly Venerate Hong's body shrank rapidly, and quickly returned to his normal height. He wore a wide-sleeved robe and was elegant and unrestrained. He was like an otherworldly expert who had descended from the mortal world. He floated toward that piece of land and said, "You brought this upon yourself and you cannot live. The armies of the Heavenly Court will kill the remaining survivors of Xuandu Tianfang City. Don't let any of them go." His voice traveled to the ears of all the military marquises of the Heavenly Court. It was extremely heavy as he said leisurely, "This is a great opportunity for you to perform meritorious deeds. It is also a great opportunity for you to plunder the wealth of Xuandu and capture the slaves." Countless banners fluttered, and one ship after another set sail. Countless majestic gods and devils flew up from the ships and charged toward the Xuandu gods and devils in Tianfang City, who were not buried under the power of Celestial Master Hong's palm. There were other planets that were not shattered by Celestial Master Hong's palm. The planets swayed, and the people of Xuandu were still on them. Some of the surviving Sun and Moon Guardians activated their magic power and Ubijnas in an attempt to escape with these people. Even though Heavenly Venerate Hong's footsteps looked slow, they were extremely fast, and he was getting closer and closer to the continent. On that continent, Qin Mu, Butcher, and the rest staggered as their footsteps moved continuously. Clang, 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 clang. The 5 heavenly Dao soldiers were stabbed into the ground by them, and they finally stabilized their bodies. The 5 of them looked at each other with lingering fear in their hearts. "I have heavenly Seal Dao soldiers here," Shahuali said in a deep voice after recovering from his shock. "This is Heavenly Origin Dao soldier," Luo Wushuang said as he looked at the Heavenly Origin mirror in his hand. "The one in my hand should be Heavenly Pillar Dao soldier," Tianshu said as he held onto a divine tower. "The one in my hand is Heavenly Secrets Dao soldier," Butcher said as he looked at the heavenly umbrella that was inserted into the ground. Qin Mu looked at the heavenly Dao soldier that he had inserted into the ground, and saw that it was like a canopy of the heavens. When it was opened, it was a canopy that turned into the heavens. The heavenly Dao pillars of the Dao under the heavens usually had the sky as the center. It was divided into 49 paths that hung down from the sky. "Mine is the heavenly Dao soldier, the general principle of the heavenly Dao," Qin Mu said solemnly. "With this unique treasure, I can always control the other heavenly Dao soldiers." Everyone let out a sigh of relief and fought with all their might. At least their efforts weren't wasted. This time they weren't just fighting with their lives on the line. The strike of Heavenly Venerate Hong had even shattered the material into chaos. Under the chaos state, the soul would most likely turn into chaos and no longer be material. There wouldn't be any black sand in the soul. At that time, regardless of whether it was Qin Mu's soul molding divine art or matter that wasn't easy, they would be completely useless. There would be no chance of survival. Heavenly Venerate Hong is an existence that can break through 35 layers of void with his own magic power. Among the 10 heavenly venerates, his magic power is the strongest, even surpassing existences like Heavenly Venerate Fire and Heavenly Venerate Shao. Qin Mu let out a turbid breath and turned back to take a look. His heart trembled when he saw Heavenly Venerate Hong's wide sleeves fluttering in the wind. He had already crossed the line of the heavenly court and was walking over under the bright light of Xuandu. It wouldn't be long before he arrived here. "Who are you guys?" Di Qing's voice suddenly sounded out, but Qin Mu didn't answer. He touched the black cloth on his face, and it was still there. Heavenly King Tianshu smiled. "Di Qing, we have already introduced ourselves. I'm the Heavenly King of Hades under Founding Emperor, and these four are the friends I invited to help us." Di Qing acted as if he hadn't heard him. He looked straight at Qin Mu and asked solemnly, "Who are you?" "You don't want to know who I am," Qin Mu said indifferently. "What you should be thinking about now is how to escape from Heavenly Venerate Hong's pursuit and escort these people out of Mystic City." Di Qing fell silent and turned back to look at the people on the broken continent. There were still hundreds of thousands of people and 100 Sun Guardians on the continent, but they were all injured. The eyes of the citizens and the injured Sun Guardians fell on him. There was despair and hope in their eyes. They were still full of confidence in him. They still believed that he could lead them out of this hopeless situation and bring them back to life. Di Qing forced a smile and smiled at them. "If you don't tell me who you are, I won't force you. I want to ask the 5 of you for a favor." Di Qing's arrogance vanished and he bowed deeply to the ground. "I implore all of you to send the disciples of my Xiandu to a safe place and far away from Xiandu." Shahuali spoke quickly and couldn't help saying, "We have already asked you to leave the people in the city long ago. We have persuaded you more than once and you even want to sacrifice our heads to the flag. What did you do long ago?" Di Qing was incomparably ashamed. His head was stuck to the ground and he didn't get up. Shahuali wanted to say more, but Qin Mu raised his hand to stop him. He looked at Di Qing, who was bowing to the ground. "If you go alone, you won't be able to hold them off for long. I'll give you 4 heavenly Dao soldiers, but only this one cannot be given to you. You can drag it out as long as you can. I can send the people of this continent further away." Di Qing got up and wiped the tears off his face. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your help, Dao brother. If there's an afterlife." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "There's no afterlife, you can go." Di Qing brought the 4 Dao weapons of Heaven Seal, Heaven Origin, Heaven Pillar, and Heaven Secrets and bowed to Qin Mu and the rest. He turned around and rose into the sky. Behind him, a heavenly palace burst forth to welcome Heavenly Venerate Hong. He was a great expert that was comparable to Yin Tianzi and White Emperor. With the support of Heavenly Dao and the Heavenly Dao weapons in hand, he was determined to fight to the death. He had to delay for a moment, even if it was just for a moment. "I brought this on myself. I brought this on myself." He chuckled as he watched Celestial Master Hong get closer and closer. Suddenly, he let out a loud laugh and unleashed all of his cultivation base, unleashing all of the power of the 4 Heavenly Dao weapons as he charged toward Celestial Master Hong. "I can't make up for the deaths of my clansmen, nor can I repay those fellow Taoists who helped me. The only thing I can do is die. I'll use my life to give others a chance to live." He was strong and fierce, but Celestial Master Hong, who was walking towards him, looked at him calmly as if he was an ant. Celestial Master Hong gently raised his hand, and the Heavenly Dao divine weapons in his hand were filled with monstrous power. "After all, he is my child," Celestial Master Hong said indifferently before Di Qing died. He looked at Celestial Master Hong in confusion, and his eyes gradually fell into darkness. From the moment Di Qing met Heavenly Venerate Hong to his death, the entire process had only taken the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. If it had been anyone else, they wouldn't have been able to escape far away in such a short time. However, the instant Di Qing left the continent, Qin Mu immediately executed Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. With Carry Extreme Heavenly Palace as the main force and the other heavenly palaces as support, he gathered his chi as a sword and slashed backward. When the sword landed, layers of space continuously appeared. The thousands of stars in the space surged out from the void, increasing the distance between them and Heavenly Venerate Hong. He slashed out sword after sword, and the space continued to expand. Even though they couldn't fight against Heavenly Venerate Hong with their combined strength, even Heavenly Venerate Hong could forget about taking Qin Mu down when it came to escaping. Even though he hadn't completely mastered ultimate carrying void scripture and heavenly venerate use technique, he had immersed himself in it for a long time. With this method, he was confident that he could escape from any heavenly venerate's pursuit. However, if he could bring the people on this continent to escape from heavenly venerate Hong's pursuit, he wouldn't have the ability to do so. Di Qing had nothing to do with him, and his clansmen had nothing to do with him. However, as long as he agreed, he would do his best. Qin Mu slashed out more than 10 times in a row, and his magic power was unable to withstand it. His feet then came to a stop. An Overlord Body 3 elixir technique changed the sequence of his heavenly palace. At that moment, he used his main heavenly palace as the leader and the other heavenly palaces as the support. He raised his cultivation and strength to the limit. Boom! A resurrection divine boat appeared below the continent and lifted up the tattered land. It slowly accelerated, and when the speed of the resurrection divine boat reached the limit, the entire continent crashed through the void and entered the first layer. After a moment, the Higan divine boat carried the continent and crashed into the second void. However, when the continent crashed into the sixth void, the entire continent was suppressed by the void to the point that it could not bear it. The people in the ruins of Tianfang City could not hold on any longer and their bodies turned illusory. The many Sun Guardians did their best to protect them with their own mana to temporarily slow down this trend. However, the fragment of Heaven's Square City was unable to hold on. Divine stones the size of mountains peeled off from the land and left before slowly dissipating into the void. The fragment of Heaven's Square City became smaller and smaller. Soon it turned from a continent into an island, forcing the people on it to gather together and barely fit in. Qin Mu's vital qi trembled, and he raised the speed of the resurrection divine ship to speed up its departure from mysterious capital. After an unknown amount of time, his magic power was about to be exhausted. He used up the last of his strength to make the fragment of Heaven's Square City break out from the eighth void. When the fragment of Heaven's Square City left the void, Qin Mu's aura rapidly weakened, and he almost fell to the ground. Everyone! With the help of Tianshu and Butcher, Qin Mu managed to stand firm. He said to the 100 Sun Guardians and the people of Xiandu, "This place is already far away from the battlefield, so I can't send all of you out of Xiandu. However, it's already very difficult for the pursuers to catch up to you. All of you can head to Origin World on your own. There is no longer any place for the people of Mystic City to protect you." He coughed violently, and after a moment, Carefree Village has already been sealed off by the Heavenly Court's army. If you can't reach there, you can't stay in Mystic City anymore. Only Eternal Peace can take you in. Go to Origin World and find Eternal Peace's Sun Guardian Flame Crystal. She will take you in. Benefactor. A Sun Guardian bowed and said, "Benefactor, please take down the black sand and leave your name so that we can remember your looks and know who saved us." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "You don't need to know our names and looks. All of you should go quickly." Suddenly, an old man from Xiandu said shakily, "Benefactor, you are so righteous that you saved us but didn't leave your names. However, we cannot be ungrateful. Benefactor, please reveal your true appearance and leave your real names. When we reach Eternal Peace, we will set up a living shrine for Benefactor and create golden bodies to pray for Benefactor day and night." Thousands of people in Xiandu knelt down and said one after another, "If you know your benefactors and don't repay them, how are you different from a beast? Benefactor, please grant my wish." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "There's no need for that. I saved all of you to make myself feel at ease. It has nothing to do with all of you." At ease? Shahuali suddenly became furious and pulled down the black cloth on his face. He shouted angrily, "Can you really feel at ease? If you can feel at ease, I can't. I saved people to leave my name and face behind. Take off your face cloth, take it off for me. Let these ignorant fellows see our faces." Butcher silently took off the black cloth on his face, and Tianshu and Luo Wushuang also took it off. Shahuali took large strides to come in front of Qin Mu and stretched out his hand to take off the black cloth on his face. Qin Mu raised his hand and struggled. "Don't. Do you want to bear the name of an infamy for the rest of your life?" Shahuali slapped his hand away and pulled the black cloth off his face. He then laughed loudly. "This is your benefactor. Did you see his face clearly? He is your benefactor. The benefactor who was stabbed by you and shot arrows every day to curse at you. Heavenly venerate Qin Mu. His gaze was like a knife as it swept across the faces of the people of Xuandu, making them not only kneel down with their corporeal bodies but also their souls. That's right. He is Celestial Master Mu. The Celestial Master Mu of the Heaven Alliance. Shahuali stabbed the demon knife heavily into the ground. He gnashed his teeth and said, "The Celestial Master that you hate to the bone." The 10th Celestial Master wanted to kill the Duke of Heaven, and he tried every means to stop him. He fought against the 10th Celestial Master with his life. He racked his brain trying to find a way for the Duke of Heaven to survive. The Heavenly Court attacked Xuandu. He knew that he was no match for them, so he tried his best to increase his strength. He even invited us. If it weren't for his friendship with us, what does the life and death of the bullshit Heavenly Duke have to do with us? Shahuali held the hilt of the saber, spun the blade, and stabbed the demon saber into the ground bit by bit. He chuckled and said, "We risked our lives to come here, not for the sake of the bullshit Heavenly Duke, not for the sake of so many lives in Xuandu, but because we are his friends, friends of life and death. If he wants us to come, we will come, even if we have to put our heads on our belts. Who do you think you are?" He had endured too much pressure, and at this moment he was finally able to release it freely. He laughed loudly and said, "You are fate, and we are also fate. Why should we use our lives to exchange for your lives? It's because Celestial Master Mu wants us to come." What did you people of Xuandu do? Create a shrine for Celestial Master Mu? Create a golden body for him? Worship him? Tui. You stabbed the scarecrow and shot him in the back with arrows every day. Spit at him and scold him. Butcher, Luo Wushuang, and Tian Shu were silent. They stood there without saying a word and let him vent. People of Xuandu have guts. Shahuali looked coldly at the Sun Guardian and the people of Xuandu. He sneered. "If you have guts, then stand up and say something. I don't want Heavenly Venerate Mu to save me. I don't want you to save me. I'm willing to die. Stand up and say something." "Alright, there's no need to say anything. I can't stop Heavenly Venerate Hong for too long." Qin Mu raised his hand and looked straight at the people of Xiandu. "That's right. I'm Eternal Peace Qin Mu." Tian Shu took a step forward and said indifferently, "I'm Eternal Peace Tian Shu." Butcher walked forward and stabbed his heavenly knife into the ground. "Eternal Peace Dao Lu Zhao." Luo Wushuang walked forward and held his single knife in his arms. "Eternal Peace Luo Wushuang." Shahuali panted heavily and gave a cold snort. "Eternal Peace Shahuali." Qin Mu said to the Sun Guardian and the people of Xiandu, "Whether or not you create a living shrine, whether or not you create a golden body, whether or not you worship it is up to you. What we are doing has nothing to do with justice and just the path. We are just asking for peace of mind. If we come back alive, there's no need for you to make our name known. If we die in Xuandu, make a grave for us in eternal peace. Let's go." Qin Mu, Butcher, and the rest left, leaving behind the Sun Guardian and the people of Xuandu. After a moment, they began to set sail and head to the origin world. Everyone had mixed feelings in their hearts. They would settle down in the origin world. As for the stories of Qin Mu, Butcher, Shahuali, Luo Wushuang, and Tian Shu, they would probably be passed down from generation to generation. Shahuali let out a long sigh and took a glance at Qin Mu. He smiled and said, "After scolding him, my heart feels much better. Heavenly Venerate Mu, you are an honest man." He immediately added, "You are an honest man in your bones. You are just cunning and crafty to your enemies, but when facing your own people and ordinary people, you are too honest. You don't have the heart to hurt your own people or ordinary people. You aren't even willing to say anything that is slightly harsh. I am not like you." He was in high spirits. He said loudly, "If I have something to say, I will say it. If I feel wronged, I will pour it out. I have done good things and I will spread it. I cannot let good people feel wronged, and I cannot let bad people spread it. These B** stars are too harsh on good people. There are all kinds of bad things in bad people. Even if there is only a little good, it will be spread by them. There are all kinds of good things in good people, and only one flaw will be scolded to death by them. I just can't stand these things." Tian Shu laughed and said, "Demon Blade Shahuali has a clear mind and is as gorgeous as his blade." Shahuali clenched the dragon tooth on his back tightly. He laughed freely. "I just don't want my respected friend to bear the name of being cursed.
Cultmaster Qin, Heavenly Venerate Mu, Beast, Demolition Qin, Fifth Mu.
No matter how I call him, he is my friend and a person that I respect. He has all kinds of small problems, but in matters of right and wrong, he has never done anything wrong. Qin Mu's eyes turned red, but he started to laugh. Luo Wuxuang revealed a smile and said, "My disciple." He immediately added, "He used to be." Butcher glanced at him and said, "He used to be your disciple, but I learned too much from you. He only learned well after following me for a period of time." Luo Wuxuang's face turned black, and he didn't say another word. Qin Mu smiled at them. These people were all his friends. One of them was his elder, but he was more like a good teacher and a good friend. It was truly a great fortune to have such friends. His cultivation was recovering rapidly. The jade platforms of the ancestral court, and the jade platforms of the various heavenly palaces, had allowed his cultivation to recover at an astonishing speed. Of course, his current cultivation was too deep, so even if his recovery speed was very fast, he would still need a few days to recover to his peak condition. Qin Mu took out the spirit herbs he had taken from the ancestral court and refined spirit pills for himself to quickly recover his vital qi. He used both methods to prevent Heavenly Venerate Hong from being unable to escape when he found them. Heavenly Venerate Hong was determined to obtain the Heavenly Principle Dao weapons. There were 49 of them, and even if he obtained 48 of them, without the Heavenly Principle Dao weapons, these Heavenly Dao weapons would only be powerful treasures. Only by obtaining the Heavens will Dao weapons would he be able to combine the power of these Dao weapons and turn them into a supreme treasure of Heavenly Dao with supreme might. It was even more powerful than the supreme treasure of Heavenly Dao refined by the ancestor God King. That's why Heavenly Venerate Hong wouldn't chase after the people of Xiandu, but us. Qin Mu's gaze flickered, and the 5 of them flew in the direction of Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Duke was incomparably majestic, and it was difficult to see his whole picture. Along the way they saw more divine cities. There were 49 divine cities in the larger scale of Xiandu, and they were named after the 49 Heavenly Dao. In the immemorial era, these divine cities were built around the Heavenly River, and they were extremely ancient. In the era of Long Han, the Heavenly Court was established to restrict the flow of the Heavenly River through South Heavenly Gate, so the river course of the Heavenly River didn't change much. However, in the middle and later period of the Long Han period, the Heavenly Court migrated out of the Yuan world and caused the Heavenly River to change course. There was no trace of the Heavenly River in Xiandu. Only the 49 divine cities and the Heavenly River ancient path were left behind. And today, the Heavenly River returned to its original position. There was surging river water flowing in the ancient path. Reflecting the starlight of Xiandu, it was very beautiful and charming. However, what it brought this time was killing and tint. The most magnificent Heaven Square city had already been destroyed because it was the gateway to block the army of the Heavenly Court. The Heavenly River flowed into Xiandu from there, and Heaven Square city was equivalent to the gateway to Xiandu Diqing, had led everyone there to block the army of the Heavenly Court precisely because Heaven Square city was extremely important. Since Heaven Square city had gathered the strongest strength of Xiandu, the strength of the other divine cities was much weaker. The army of the Heavenly Court had already arrived here, and along the way, Qin Mu and the rest saw many destroyed divine cities that had been smashed into pieces. The number of soldiers gathered in these divine cities was relatively small, and they couldn't compare to Tianfang City. As such, they were easily destroyed without the help of Heavenly Venerates. Along the way, they saw many gods of Xiandu being captured and imprisoned in cages. These gods were the spoils of war of the military marquises of the Heaven Court. As for the corpses floating in the starry sky, there were countless of them. There were gods and devils among the dead, but most of them were living beings in Xiandu. They were demigods, but there were also ordinary creatures among the demigods who couldn't cultivate to the realm of gods. There were also countless creatures in Xuandu who were captured and sent to the cabins of the ships. These people and the captured Xuandu gods would become slaves of the military officers of various armies and be sent to various places, or they would be sold to mines in the various heavens. Who would have thought that the high and mighty Xuandu back then would have such a day? Tianshu sighed with emotion. Their speed became faster and faster as they avoided the army of the Heavenly Court and headed in the direction of the Heavenly Duke of Xuandu. The murderous aura of the heavenly Tao became denser and denser. With how tyrannical Heavenly Fiend was, it made the god execution stage in Qinmu's heavenly palace become more and more tyrannical. The murderous aura became knives that howled and raged on the god execution stage. Even though their cultivations had increased, the 5 of them still had heavy hearts. The stronger Heavenly Fiend was, the more sacred and living beings that died in Xiandu would be. Will the murderous aura condense to form the 50th heavenly Dao weapon? Butcher muttered. No, Qing Tianfei will bring the sacred ground of the ancestral court, god execution stage, and sweep away the murderous aura of heavenly Tao. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he said, Supreme Emperor will not let go of this chance to let God execution mysterious knife mature. Suddenly the sound of a zither came, and space jumped rapidly. Qin Mu's heart moved slightly, and he looked in the direction of the sound. He saw the figure of a beauty flashing past the side of the heavenly river, and behind her was Heavenly Venerate Fire. Heavenly Venerate Fire held Dao Fire ancestral land with one hand, and the huge 9-layer sacrificial altar of Dao Fire was held above his head. He walked forward with a stout body, chasing after Heavenly Venerate Moon. I wonder if there's a chance to plot against Heavenly Venerate Fire? He had just thought of this when he suddenly felt something. He hurriedly turned back and saw Heavenly Venerate Hong fluttering his sleeves as he rushed over. Let's go. Qin Mu's body floated up, and just as he was about to bring the 4 of them to execute space divine arts to avoid Heavenly Venerate Hong, a starry sky suddenly appeared in Xiandu at the beginning. It was just a small galaxy, but it soon grew bigger. The vast divine consciousness visualized in Xiandu, turning from illusory to real, causing the stars to expand and stand between Heavenly Venerate Hong, Qin Mu, and the rest. Divine King Lang. Heavenly Venerate Hong chuckled and flew across the starry sky. He saw a star in the starry sky suddenly turn into a heavens, which caught him off guard. Little Dower. Heavenly Venerate Hong smiled and leaped out of the heavens. His body passed through the layers of stars, but the moment he jumped out, he found himself in another heavens. The layers of heavens were like flowers in a painting, layered on top of each other. Qin Mu relaxed when he saw Heavenly Venerate Hong trapped. He looked at the source of his divine consciousness and saw God King Lang, walking on the heavenly river. It was cold and clear, and starlight flowed under her feet like a flower. Wherever she walked, the army of the heavenly court would put down their war drums, put down their weapons and look at her in a daze. When she left, they seemed to have woken up from a dream, and only then did the killing begin again. Qin Mu looked at the beauty on the river in the distance. The beauty looked at him and waved her hand. Qin Mu revealed a smile and waved his hand at Langer before leaving with Butcher, Tianshu, and the rest. Just as he left, he saw a burly man leaping like a bird from behind, stepping on the heavenly river to rush over to Lang. It was the 11th Heavenly Venerate Shi Chilua. The army of the heavenly court would be bewitched by Langer's beauty, but Shi Chilua wouldn't. This godly monarch did not dare to compete with him. He immediately fled the 35th void and Shi Chilua charged forward. However, he was unable to reach the 35th void and could only sigh helplessly. However, Hong Tianzuan had already escaped. He punched at the 35th void. His combat strength was monstrous and he was much stronger than Shi Chilua. It was not safe for this godly monarch to hide in the 35th void. At that moment, godly King Langer actually visualized Yudu and visualized a Yudu world in the 35th void. It was dark and unclear. Heavenly Venerate Hong didn't understand what he meant, but he saw faint lights appear in the Yudu world that godly King Langer visualized. A paper ship floated behind her. Heavenly Venerate you.
Heavenly Veneraton Shuckled.
Xiandu was the sacred ground of the heavenly Tao, and as the master of the great Tao of Yudu, Heavenly Venerate you had probably been invited by Qin Mu to participate in the Battle of Xiandu. However, Xiandu's suppression on him was too great, therefore, even Heavenly Venerate you had to rely on the Yudu world that Divine King Lang Lan had visualized in order to gain a foothold. Under such circumstances, even if Heavenly Venerate you joined hands with Lang Lan, they wouldn't be able to contend against him. His fist of heavenly Tao was vast and mighty, shattering layers of void space. On the paper ship behind Divine King Lang Lan, Heavenly Venerate you raised the lantern and shone it at him. Just as the lantern's light became incomparably bright, countless paper boats, countless lanterns, and countless heavenly venerate you suddenly appeared in the imagined Hades world. At this moment Hades was empty. Only the ghosts on Earth Count, as well as some demons and Little Ghost King were left. And those messengers of death, which numbered in the trillions, had all disappeared without a trace. They had arrived at Xuandu and were now standing behind godly King Lang Bao. These messengers of death raised their lanterns at the same time, and lit them up to meet the fist of Heavenly Master Hong. The 35th void shook violently, causing people to look at them with surprise. Although the power of Heavenly Master Hong's fist had been weakened by the 35th void, its power was still extraordinary. However, it was blocked by Heavenly Master Yu, forcing people to reassess Heavenly Master Yu's strength. Celestial Master Yu blocked the attack, and godly King Lang Bao took the opportunity to escape, disappearing without a trace along with the countless messengers of death and the ghost ship. Celestial Master Hong and Shi Qilua were about to chase after him when suddenly, the heavenly fiend in Xiandu surged crazily and gathered in the same place. The two celestial masters were shocked. Shi Qilua took the treasure chest on his back and opened it. He took out something from the chest and stood up. It was a two-pointed tower, and the two tips of the tower were the God-made eye. Shi Qilua looked through the God-made eye, and immediately saw a huge altar flying towards Xuandu Heavenly Duke. Concubine Tian stood on the altar. The stairs on the altar were strange. When Shi Qilua looked, there were 12 stairs on the altar, and when Heavenly Venerate Hong came over to take a look, there were 9 stairs. On the altar, 2 blood-colored murderous auras were dancing on the altar like angry dragons. They were very similar to the Heavenly Court's God-slaying platform, the God-slaying mysterious saber. The Ancestral Court's God-slaying platform. Shi Qilua chuckled and said, "This little bee ** brought this Ancestral Court's sacred land here. What does she want?" Heavenly Venerate Hong's face darkened and he said coldly, "This God-slaying platform is gathering the heaven's evil energy and devouring it to refine the divine saber." Shi Qilua quickly took a closer look and saw that the power of the 2 God-slaying sabers in the Blood Fiend was increasing crazily. They were gathering the heavenly fiend energy in Xiandu and refining the power of the God-slaying sabers in the Blood Fiend. The 2 God-slaying sabers did not pose much of a threat to them at the moment, but the speed at which they were improving made their hearts palpitate. The heavenly fiend is not strong enough yet. When Heavenly Duke dies, the evil energy will be extremely strong. Heavenly Venerate Hong sneered and said, "In fact, it is even possible that Consort Hong Tian wants to devour Heavenly Duke's physical body and use it to cultivate these 2 God-slaying sabers." He said indifferently, "How can devouring the murderous aura and Heavenly Fiend compare to devouring Heavenly Duke, a Tao-born god?" Shi Qilua was shocked and said, "What is the little slut planning to do with these 2 divine sabers? I should say, what is Supreme Emperor planning to do with these 2 divine sabers?" Heavenly Venerate Hong shook his sleeves and flew into the sky. "Madam Yuan Mu, we need to work together to guard against Supreme Emperor." Shi Qilua sprinted frantically and tried to keep up with him, but Heavenly Venerate Hong was still much faster than him. Boom! A divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, descended from the sky. Shi Qilua stood on the shoulder of the divine weapon, and Heavenly Venerate Royal sprinted wildly to catch up with Heavenly Venerate Hong. "Hong, have you seen Lang Xian and Ancestor God King?" Shi Qilua asked. Before he finished his words, suddenly a terrible light burst from afar, penetrating Xuandu, the brilliance of the light, over the light of millions of stars. Xuandu. Finger of the Divine. Lang Xian Emperor is over there, and he is the enemy. Is it founding Emperor Qinyi? Can force Lang Xian to use the full power of the Divine Yu on one finger. I'm afraid only he. Shi Qilua was puzzled. He stood on the shoulder of the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, and raised his divine eye to look. It was not founding Emperor Qinyi who was going against Lang Xian, but a divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal. Shi Qilua was taken aback. This divine weapon is the Ancestor God King's. It looks like the Heavenly Duke is controlling the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, to hunt down Divine Emperor Lang Xian. Strange. If Lang Xian is here, then where are Founding Emperor and Ancestor God King? In the Ancestral Court, Founding Emperor walked out from the Jade Lake Jade platform that belonged to Divine Emperor Lang Xian. He was as calm as ever, but the surrounding divine Emperor Longshuan's subordinates were staring at him nervously. I've already been to the Jade Lake Jade platform of the ancestral court of the 4 great heavenly gates. There are still places like the God-slaying platform, the 9 prisons platform, and the Jade capital that I have yet to visit. The Jade capital city is probably extremely dangerous, so there's no need to go there for the time being. The God-slaying platform was taken away by concubine Chang Tian, so it's not in the ancestral court. As long as I reach Xiandu, I can enter the God-slaying platform. He did not seem to have any sense of urgency regarding the battle in Xiandu. He pondered and said, "Then, after I go to the 9 prisons platform, I should head to Xiandu. During this period of time, Celestial Master Mu won't be able to hold on, and the Heavenly Duke should be able to hold on as well." At that moment he saw Celestial Master Hong's territory Tianhai. Founding Emperor was slightly startled. His gaze swept across Tianhai. His gaze was sharp like his sword Dao, and he could see through everything. This Tianhai also has great Dao condensing in it, forming a reflection of Xiandu in the sea. Could it be a possible realm as well? Founding Emperor could not help but ponder for a moment. But Celestial Master Mu did not mention that there is such a realm as the Sky Sea Dragon Palace. Could it be that he does not know that such a realm exists? He walked towards the Sky Sea. The Sky Sea was unruffled and was like a bright mirror. Its light reflected everything in Xiandu at the same time. In the origin world, in the shady heaven world, the ancestor god king greeted Consort Tianyin and said with a smile, "Consort, you are no longer an ancient god. There is no need to fight to the death for the Heavenly Duke. Even if you do not consider your own life, you must consider the life of your shady heaven world." He raised his head and looked at the soles of the Heavenly Duke's feet. This was the only place where the Heavenly Duke could not be a four-faced god. It was also the weakness of the Heavenly Duke and the Heavenly Dao. The Heavenly Duke and Heavenly Dao weren't omnipotent. There were places where the light of Xiandu couldn't reach, and there were also places where the Heavenly Dao couldn't reach. The place where the Heavenly Duke couldn't reach was under his feet. He was a four-faced god that was similar to Qin Mu's divine treasure territory in Xiandu. No matter where he was attacked, it would only be his front. Attacking him was attacking the Heavenly Dao, and he would receive the fiercest counterattack from the Heavenly Duke. Xiandu was the birthplace of the Heavenly Duke, and his abilities would be raised to the extreme there. His abilities would definitely not be inferior to the peak of the absolute beginning Heavenly Emperor. Even Heavenly Venerates couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't be injured or even die in the face of such an attack. However, the Heavenly Duke couldn't shine on the bottom of his feet. Xiandu was the brightest place, and the Heavenly Duke was also the brightest ancient god in the world. However, the darkest place in the world was also born because of this. This place was the Heavenly Shade world under his feet. The Heavenly Dao was also unable to reach this place. As a result, this place became the gathering place of the black sand of the soul. The Heavenly Dao did not exist here. The black sand of the soul gathered and turned into the ghost of the dead. It devoured everything and could never be fed. The great Dao of Yudu was also unable to reach this place. The Earth Count controlled the wandering souls in the world, but it was powerless against the black sand Earth Count of the soul. Consort Tianyin was the sacred being born here. Consort Tianyin looked at the thousands of living beings in the heavenly Yin world that she had enlightened with her Dao, and then looked at the ancestor god king. Her abilities were simply not enough to fight against the ancestor god king. If she forcefully fought against the ancestor god king for the Heavenly Duke, she would only be killed by the ancestor god king. Even the living beings in the heavenly Yin world would be wiped out. Even though she had walked her own path and was no longer the simple and ignorant ancient god, it was just as Qin Mu had said. Her paths, skills, and divine arts were to create life, not to kill, not to fight. After a moment, Empress Tianyin retreated and protected the living beings of heavenly Yin world. When the God King makes a move, don't hurt the innocent. The ancestor God King smiled slightly and took out the treasure of heavenly Dao that he had refined with the divine gold divine materials of the ancestral court to form a heavenly Dao supreme treasure. "Don't worry, your majesty. The heavens have the virtue of living well, and I'm not a cruel and easy-to-kill person. I won't let all life in your heavenly Yin world die. However, it is difficult to guarantee that my divine powers will affect the shady firmament world. Your Highness, do your best to protect them." If all life in the shady firmament world really dies, Your Highness, please create a new world to reinvent all life. Consort Shady Firmament raised her brows, but she held back her anger and did not turn hostile. The ancestor god king looked up at the soles of the heavenly duke's feet. He smiled and said, "A wise father is like a son. The heavenly duke is my father, my greatest father god. But he is too bright and majestic. He believes that good and evil are the principles that run this world, and there is no need to interfere. He will not think for the sake of the demigods, nor will he think for his children. The lives of his children and the glory of his children have nothing to do with him. But he is too hypocritical." He sneered and said faintly, "The heavenly Tao is truly selfless, but the heavenly Tao gave birth to him. He has his own consciousness, so it is impossible for him to be selfless. If the heavenly duke is truly selfless, why did he give birth to me?" The mocking expression on his face became even more intense. It was as if he was talking to Consort Tianyin, but also as if he was talking to himself. He said slowly, "He is also lustful for beauty and power. He also has his own desires. In normal times, the heavenly Tao suppresses his desires, allowing him to maintain a bright and magnificent image. However, there are always loopholes in the heavenly Tao." He mocked. In the battle to eradicate the creator race, he found this loophole and reincarnated. That was why I was born. In that battle, Heavenly Emperor Absolute Beginning caught hold of his weakness and forced him to submit to the Heavenly Emperor. I saw it all. I know the desires in my father's heart better than anyone else because I am the son born from his desires. He said something that even Consort Tianyin was deeply afraid of. When he became one of the 10 heavenly venerates and thought that he could hide it from the world, I was the only one who recognized him. How could I not recognize him? I am the child born from his desires. When I saw him become heavenly venerate Hong, he was still aloof and calm. However, when he controlled the heavenly emperor's absolute beginning physical body, I could feel his ambition and desires growing bigger and bigger. He stared at the soles of Heavenly Duke's feet and looked up at everything in Xiandu there. Heavenly Lord Hong was rushing to Xiandu to kill Heavenly Duke. "I have been waiting for a chance, father." The ancestor god king laughed, but there was not much joy in his laughter. There was only coldness. "The chance I have been waiting for is for you to reveal your true weakness. This weakness can only be revealed by yourself. I have always been the most reckless among the 10 heavenly venerates. I am even more reckless, more rude, and less scheming than Fire Heavenly Venerate. You know that I am faking it, but you think that I am faking it for the other heavenly venerates. What you don't know is that I am acting recklessly. Why should I be faking it for them? I am faking it for you. I have been waiting for the opportunity for you to reveal your Achilles heel. I have been waiting for this opportunity for too long, and I have been faking it for too long. Now I have finally gotten this opportunity." Xuandu. The heavenly court army advanced steadily. Celestial Master Hong, Divine Emperor Langxian, Tian Concubine Gao, Shi Qilua, Celestial Master Hua, and the others were constantly harassed by Celestial Master Yu, and Godly King Lang. This, however, the 3 of them did not dare to confront them head-on. They usually left as soon as they touched them and did not stop. Therefore, they did not cause too much trouble for them. On the other hand, the heaven concubines gave all the heavenly venerates a headache. The power of the 2 blood fiend gods slaying knives on God execution platform became stronger and stronger. They devoured the heaven flames and swept away all the evil chi in Xiandu, making all the heavenly venerates secretly alert. The identity of the heaven concubines was almost an open secret among the 10 heavenly venerates. This also depended on Qin Mu's mischief. Even though Qin Mu didn't publicly announce that the heaven concubines were the great emperors, because of Qin Mu, Qing Tianfei and Supreme Emperor suffered heavy injuries time and time again. Every time, Qing Tianfei was injured together with Supreme Emperor. Even though the 10 heavenly venerates were allies, they restrained each other and monitored each other. They placed their own spies beside each other, and even sent their disciples to infiltrate each other's subordinates to become the other's disciples. It could really be said that they were going to the extreme. Qing Tianfei's injuries hadn't been hidden from them. Let alone getting injured, they knew clearly what Qing Tianfei had eaten, what she had said, and who she had met. Now that most of 10th Heavenly Venerate's identity was already transparent, and with Shi Qilua the shit rod who liked to stir up trouble in the world, and Qin Mu the shit rod, it would be strange if the identity that she had hidden for hundreds of thousands of years wasn't revealed. If he were to refine these two divine knives. Heavenly Venerate Fire glanced at Qi Tianfei who was standing on God Execution platform, and the corners of his eyes twitched. The God-slaying platform he saw had a total of 24 steps. Divine Emperor Longshuan's gaze also landed on concubine Chang Tian. The God-slaying platform he saw had 28 steps. He thought to himself, if concubine Chang Tian died in the battle against the Heavenly Duke, she would still be a martyr. The Ancestor God King is a brilliant scholar, and the denunciation of the Heavenly Duke was written by him. He could write an article in memory of concubine Chang Tian. Strange, the Ancestor God King has always been on the front line of killing his father. Why is there no sign of him? The current Mystic City can really be said to be a chaotic dance of devils. Qin Mu brought Zhehuali Tianshu, and the rest to shuttle through Mystic City. From time to time they would meet Heavenly Venerate flying past, and at this moment it was impossible for him not to dodge. He couldn't help sighing ruefully. It's also impossible to find an opportunity to sneak attack Heavenly Venerate Fire. He had been staring at Heavenly Venerate Fire all this while, trying to find an opportunity to strike. However, after searching for a long time he still couldn't find it. Muir, you can't keep staring at Heavenly Venerate Fire all the time. Butcher couldn't hold it in any longer and said, the other Heavenly Venerates can also sneak attack. Tianshu, Zhehuali, and Luo Wushuang were also speechless at Qin Mu staring at Heavenly Venerate Fire all the time. Heavenly Venerate Fire speed was fast, and even if it was the Dao Fire ancestral land of the South Pole Heaven, his speed was also extremely astonishing. He would often transform into a beam of fire and leave. He was chasing after Heavenly Venerate Moon, and he wouldn't stop until he killed Heavenly Venerate Moon. On the other hand, Heavenly Venerate Moon relied on his path, skills and divine arts to shuttle between the Heavenly Venerates. Even if he couldn't severely injure them, it would still cause them a lot of trouble. It was simply too difficult to find an opportunity to sneak attack Heavenly Venerate Fire in such a situation. Qin Mu also realized his obsession and immediately gave up on the thought of focusing on Heavenly Venerate Fire. Instead, he analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of each Heavenly Venerate. Heavenly Venerate Hong, Heavenly Venerate Fire, Qi Tianfei Langxian, Shi Qilua. Heavenly Venerate Hong is too strong. After chopping off his hand, if you want to take advantage of him, you can only use Heavenly Program Dao soldiers to snatch the other Heavenly Dao soldiers when he is injured. If we ambush him, it will be very difficult. Previously we did it on purpose, but now that he is prepared, we will only be killed by him if we ambush him. Fire Celestial Master is running the most actively now, but in fact, he is hiding from the limelight. He is chasing after Celestial Master Yu, but he cannot kill him even if he is busy. In this way, he can avoid the first collision with Heavenly Duke. If we want to ambush him, we don't have the chance for now. Langxian's abilities are too strong, so we can't withstand the two knives from Heaven Consort Gao. No matter how I think about it, it's still safer to ambush Madame Yuan Mu. Qin Mu blinked and his gaze landed on Shi Qilua. Among the Heavenly Venerates, Shi Qilua's magic power was the weakest, and his battle prowess mainly depended on Divine Weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal. However, if he controlled Divine Weapon Heavenly Venerate Royal, he wouldn't be able to control his body so easily. Thus, with Qin Mu and the rest reaching Dao realm of 30 heavens of knife path, and with Heavenly Dao supporting Heavenly Fiend, it was still possible for them to heavily injure Shi Qilua. Shi Qilua is a little girl like Madame Yuan Mu, and this little girl has nothing to do with me. Bah! Nothing at all. Qin Mu made up his mind. He was the same as Madame Yuan Mu, a person who wanted the world to be in chaos. However, Qin Mu was afraid that the 10 Heavenly Venerables wouldn't be in chaos and that the Heavenly Court wouldn't be in chaos. On the other hand, Madame Yuan Mu was the one who wanted the entire world to be in chaos. However, after getting rid of the Heavenly Duke, Madame Yuan Mu and the 10 Heavenly Venerates had the same interests. At this moment, Shi Qilua had already arrived not far away from the Divine Weapon Celestial Venerable Royal that was controlled by the Heavenly Duke. This Divine Weapon Celestial Venerable Royal was the one of the Ancestor God King. However, when he was suppressed by the Heavenly Dao of Xuandu, He became the heavy weapon that the Heavenly Duke used to deal with them. Shi Qilua was the creator of the divine weapon Celestial Venerable Royal, and the reason he came this time was to subdue this divine weapon Celestial Venerable Royal. That divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, was extremely terrifying. He unleashed the power of the heavenly Tao to the extreme. With a wave of his hand, he was able to unleash the divine power of the 49 heavenly Tao collections. However, the divine Emperor Langxian, who was going against him, was also extremely stunning. The divine power of the absolute beginning Tao was in his hands. It was no longer a simple divine origin finger. His divine origin finger was originally the strongest divine power among the 10 heavenly venerates. Although it was only one finger, its power was really overbearing. Even Emperor Tai, who was known as the strongest physical body, was unable to withstand one finger of his. But now, Divine Emperor Langxian had actually comprehended a great divine ability of the absolute, beginning Tao at different Tao realm levels. Each and every one of them was stronger than the last. He was not at a disadvantage when fighting against this divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal. In the vast galaxy of Xuandu above the Milky Way, the battle between the two had displayed battle prowess that even the other heavenly venerates were amazed by. The Milky Way in the galaxy was broken by the two, countless planets were blasted apart, and many suns were pushed out of their places. Even the Milky Way was cut off because of the two. When did Langxian become so strong? No, we have to suppress him. Shi Qilua stared at the divine weapon Heavenly Venerate. He planned to wait for the divine weapon Heavenly Venerate to injure Divine Emperor Langxian before subduing the divine weapon Heavenly Venerate. Divine Emperor Langxian's battle prowess was getting higher and higher, and Absolute Beginning's divine ability was getting more and more ferocious. In a short moment, he had displayed 28 great divine abilities of entering the Tao, which made the corners of Shi Qilua's eyes twitch. Why is this fellow able to enter the Tao so quickly? It has only been less than 10 years since Founding Emperor passed down the Tao realm, yet he has already cultivated to this stage. Even his sworn enemy, Absolute Beginning, doesn't have such perception, right? Shi Qilua blinked his eyes, feeling rather bitter in his heart. Could it be that the seed of Celestial King Gongli is better? Better than someone else's seed? His gaze suddenly landed on the light wheel behind Divine Emperor Langxian's head. In the light wheel was Divine Emperor Langxian's great heavenly court, and above the great heavenly court soaring heaven's treasured palace floated this simple and unadorned fruit. The fruit was shriveled and had no luster at all. It was wrinkled, but it continued to rotate. As the Tao fruit rotated, the Tao aura on Divine Emperor Langxian's body became stronger. It gave people the feeling that he could enter the Tao realm again at any time. Entering the 29th sky of the Tao realm. What is that thing? Shi Qilua did not recognize the Tao fruit and was still looking for an opportunity. Suddenly, a god-slaying platform rushed between divine weapon Heavenly Venerate and Langxian. Concubine Changtian stood on the platform and giggled. Langxian, I'm here to help you. Two streaks of crimson mystic light shot out from the god-slaying platform. Shi Qilua could not help but fly into a rage. Supreme Emperor, you mother****, you want to destroy my divine weapon. She could not hold it in any longer and wanted to immediately take back the control of the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, from the hands of the Heavenly Duke. When she created the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, she had left behind countless secret sections. The divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, in the hands of the 10th Heavenly Venerate, had long been regarded as her own. It was also her capital to kill the other Heavenly Venerates. At this moment, when she saw that the divine weapon in her hands was going to be cut off by Concubine Changtian, she was naturally furious. On the other side, Divine Emperor Langxian could not help but fly into a rage. Concubine Changtian seemed to be dealing with the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, but in fact, she was planning to kill him as well. Moreover, the most insidious part of Concubine Changtian was that her two divine blades were aimed at the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal. If she cut the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, and seized the heavenly Tao in the divine weapon, her power would soar. In the next moment she would cut Langxian's neck. If she dodged, the great heavenly court behind her would not be able to dodge, and the Tao fruit in her heavenly court would probably be cut off. The Supreme Emperor recognized the Tao fruit. Lang Xian's divine emperor immediately understood concubine Qi Tian's intention. He thought to himself, not only does she want to cut off my entry into the 29th heaven of the Tao realm, but she also wants to destroy my foundation in the path of Tao. His divine ability changed abruptly, and 28 heaven absolute beginning divine abilities burst out consecutively. Not only did he attack the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal, but he also attacked concubine Qi Tian on the god-slaying platform. Shi Qilua immediately controlled the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, and stole the power of the heavenly Tao for his own use. He immediately felt the terrifying and boundless power of the heavenly Tao in this divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal's body. He could not help but be overjoyed. This trip to Mystic Capital is at the right place. Supreme Emperor Lang Xian, you're courting death. He was furious. At this moment, the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, was being pincer-attacked by two terrifying existences. He was afraid that he would die in the next moment. Even if he stole the power of the heavenly Tao, he would not be able to convert it into his own cultivation in time. You have no idea how terrifying I am. Shi Qilua unleashed his power and 3 divine weapons, Heavenly Lord Royal, shot into the sky from his treasure chest. They expanded rapidly on the heavenly river and unleashed their full power in an instant. Some of these divine weapons, Heavenly Lord Royal, were surrounded by the innate One Qi as if Heavenly Lord Haotian had come personally. Some were filled with the Tao of spiritual sense as if Heavenly Lord Chang was personally controlling the divine weapons. Some were filled with Tao fire as if Heavenly Lord Hua was controlling them. Standing on the god-slaying platform, concubine Chang Tian saw this scene. She was shocked. When this woman Yuanmu created the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, she left behind countless secret sections. Anyone who uses the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, to display their techniques will be spied on by her. I used it once and she found out about my techniques and abhijanas. Boom! When the 2 heavenly venerates and 4 divine weapons collided, the heavenly river was evaporated into sections. The earth-shattering ripples caused the distant heavenly river to tremble violently like ripples. Shi Qilua stood on a section of the heavenly river and executed his divine weapon. He gritted his teeth, but at that moment he suddenly sensed danger. He hurriedly rose into the sky, and a knife light whizzed past his neck. Shi Qilua's messy head danced in the air, and he saw the domain of a divine treasure suddenly appear. Qin Mu Tianshu and the other 5 masked men stood in the domain and beheaded him with a knife. This little enemy! Shi Qilua was so angry that he laughed. Even though Qin Mu and the rest were covered in black cloth, he could still recognize Qin Mu. He immediately controlled his headless body to bring the 100 treasure chest and run away. The 100 treasure chest opened once more, and there was a divine weapon, Celestial Emperor Royal, about to fly out when he saw a knife slashing down and chopping down the 100 treasure chest. The knife light struck forward and covered the 100 treasure chest. Just as Qin Mu was about to grab it, he saw Shi Qilua's headless body clanging loudly, and the corporeal body made of divine stones suddenly split apart. Qin Mu and the rest were astonished when they saw Shi Qilua's headless body changing back and forth like an incomparably exquisite divine weapon. It was incomparably complicated, and in an instant, it had formed an incomparably huge divine weapon. This is bad. Shi Qilua is the ruler of Father Heavenly Palace, and he borrowed the power of Father Heavenly Palace to transform himself. At the same time Qin Mu grabbed the 100 treasure chest, Shi Qilua's head had already landed in the center of the incomparably complicated divine weapon. The divine weapon was activated with a loud bang, and flames burst forth to form the Tao wheel behind Heavenly Emperor of Fire's head. The divine weapon was like the ancestral land of Tao and fire. Boom! Boundless Tao fire rushed over, and the flames evaporated everything. Madame Yuanmu's paths, skills, and divine arts are truly incomparably strange. Qin Mu could only bear the pain and give up on Shi Qilua's 100 treasure chest. Before the Tao fire reached his body, he sliced open the void and rushed into the 30 layers of void. The Tao fire whizzed over and was immediately obliterated by the void. Shahuali cried out in surprise and cried out, "This Shi Qilua's methods made me think of Xing'an. When Xing'an's abilities are cultivated to the extreme, he'll probably be another Shi Qilua." Tianshu and Luo Wushuang didn't know who Xing'an was and didn't think too much about it. Butcher, on the other hand, knew everything about Xing'an. Zhehuali is right. Xing'an's abilities are indeed similar to Shichilua's, and they share the same goal through different paths. Madame Yuanmu has obtained too many benefits from controlling Father Heavenly Palace. Every god royal Heavenly Venerate has a secret door, and she takes the opportunity to spy on the other Heavenly Venerates' paths, skills, divine arts, and even cultivation methods. As for the other Heavenly Venerates, whenever they use the full strength of the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, they will be spied on by her. Qin Mu turned back to take a look and saw Shichilua's body reassembling again. He quickly recovered to his original state, which made people click their tongues in wonder. At that moment, an incomparably terrifying ripple burst forth. It was the god-slaying mysterious knife of Empress Chang Tian, the second wave of the fierce collision between Divine Emperor Lang Xian's primordial divine art and Shichilua's four great divine weapons, Heavenly Venerate Royal. This throb spread to the 30th layer of void, making it impossible for them to stabilize their bodies. Goddess Chang Tian was covered in blood. The attacks of Lang Xian and the two divine weapons, Heavenly Venerate Royal, sent her body flying out of the god-slaying platform. However, her two god-slaying dark sabers also cut off one of the divine weapons, Heavenly Venerate Royal, at the waist. They seized the heavenly Tao power within, and their power skyrocketed. The heavenly palaces behind Divine Emperor Lang Xian's head were cut open, and his Tao fruit was damaged. The essence and qi in the Tao fruit flowed out crazily. Divine Emperor Lang Xian's eyes were bloodshot from killing, but he was ambushed from behind by the two divine artifacts, turning his back into a bloody mess. His bones and tendons were broken, and blood spewed out of his mouth as he fell forward. Shichilua's head had been cut off by Qin Mu's sneak attack, so he couldn't control the divine artifact properly. He was immediately pointed at by Divine Emperor Lang Xian, and the head of one of the divine artifacts exploded, turning him into a headless celestial master Yu. Shichilua's head had also been cut off by Qin Mu's knife, and his Tao injuries had yet to recover. He was still unable to reassemble his head and body back to their original appearance. 3 celestial venerables had actually been injured, and 2 of the 4 great divine weapons had actually been lost. This might be a great opportunity to make a huge profit and heavily injure the 3 great celestial venerables. Qin Mu was indescribably excited, and he moved his feet to carry the 4 of them back to the battlefield. Mu'er can't. Heavenly Venerate Mu can't. Cultmaster Qin can't. Butcher Luo Wushuang Tianshu and Zhehuali stretched out their palms to press on Qin Mu's shoulder. Their expressions were solemn. It was enough to sneak attack Shichilua once, but a second time was courting death. Even though the 3 heavenly venerates had their differences, they would still share a common enemy when facing enemies. Qin Mu was blinded by benefits, and if he brought them down, he would definitely be killed by the 3 heavenly venerates in one strike. Qin Mu immediately thought of the crucial point and stopped. However, at that moment, a bright light suddenly appeared in the void, and boundless light rose from behind them. The 5 of them were dumbfounded. It was the palm of the heavenly Duke, and the starlight turned into substance to form a huge hand. The palm moved, and it gave off the Tao sounds of 49 heavenly Das. It rumbled and shook, and at the same time it was incomparably pleasing to the ears. The hand of heavenly Duke waved and slid down. Bang, 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 it pierced through 35 layers of void consecutively, bringing with it monstrous might as it attacked the 3 great heavenly venerates. When this palm fell from the top of Qin Mu and the rest's heads, they could even clearly see the palm markings. They were markings that were different from those of postnatal living beings or demigods. They were markings of heavenly Tao. They were profound, abstruse, and unfathomable. The markings became bigger, more exquisite, and more minute. They contained endless details. Some of the markings were like mountains, some like stars, some like birds, beasts, insects, and fish, and some like the strange phenomena of gods and devils. The closer they got, the more details there were. The hand of Heavenly Duke wasn't targeting them and had brushed past them. However, the palm crushed layers of void, and the shattered void fragments turned into turbulent currents that whistled and rushed forward, lifting Qin Mu and the rest up. Their bodies swayed. Qin Mu hurriedly executed his divine art and brought Butcher and the rest to dodge the incomparably sharp void fragments. They dodged the chaotic currents with great difficulty and finally landed on the arm of the Heavenly Duke. The 5 of them immediately sprinted and ran up along the arm of the Heavenly Duke. The markings on the arm of the Heavenly Duke were also incomparably detailed, like natural Tao markings. They would sometimes cross mountains and sometimes leap over stars, and a wondrous heavenly voice sounded out beside their ears, vibrating continuously. Boom! Below, the Heavenly Duke's palm suddenly covered the 3 heavenly venerates. Under the control of the Heavenly Tao consciousness, the Heavenly Duke finally began to come into direct contact with the heavenly venerates. The Heavenly Duke will also seize the opportunity to launch a sneak attack? Divine Emperor Langxian was both surprised and amused. Although he was injured by the 2 heavenly venerates, these injuries were not fatal. When the Heavenly Duke's palm came, he immediately stopped attacking Shichilua and concubine Liao Tian. He turned around in the air without any explanation. He raised his strength to the maximum. At that moment, he had his back facing Qi Tian consort and Shichilua. His back was empty and he didn't have any defense. He just displayed it in front of the 2 heavenly venerates. Shichilua gently waved his hand and placed it on the back of his heart. The flesh and blood on Divine Emperor Langxian's back that had been smashed into mush by the 2 heavenly venerates immediately recovered. Broken bones were reconnected, and his injuries were healed. On the other side, Qi Tian consort returned to God execution platform. With a flick of her sleeve she brushed past Shichilua's neck. The remnant of the murderous aura and knife path left behind by Qin Mu's knife was immediately absorbed by her, feeding back the murderous aura and divine knife of God execution platform. Shichilua's head flew back and landed on his neck. His injuries healed, and a light wheel flew out from the back of his head to the top of Qing Tian consort's head. The light wheel rotated from the top of Qing Tian consort's head to the bottom of her feet. Qing Tian consort's bones and tendons had been broken by Langxian, but with the help of Shichilua's path of creation, her corporeal body immediately recovered to its peak condition. Even though the 3 of them had still been killing each other and looked like they wanted to kill each other, they were actually healing each other at this moment. They didn't have the slightest bit of defense against each other, and looked like comrades who could entrust their lives to each other. This was the tacit understanding between the 10 heavenly venerates. When there was no great enemy, they would attack each other in every way and look for an opportunity to kill the opponent. However, when the enemy appeared, they would immediately be allies on the same line and could entrust their lives to them. This was the reason why the 10 heavenly venerates could remain standing for millions of years. The 3 heavenly venerates attacked almost at the same time. The treasure chest behind Shichilua opened, and another divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, jumped out. His 2 divine weapons were destroyed, but at this time 3 of them were still intact. The 3 divine weapons roared, and their bodies expanded rapidly. Soon they were many times larger than Shichilua, Emperor Langxian, and Empress Changtian. Even the ancestral court's god-slaying platform was insignificant in front of them. These 3 divine weapons, Heavenly Venerate Royal, had huge bodies. They represented the strongest force and most shocking weapon of the Heaven Court in the past million years. The 3 gods shook their bodies and turned into 3 heads and 6 arms. Their tendons and bodies were ferocious, and they raised their 18 arms high. With a boom they actually blocked the attack from the Heavenly Duke. The moment they blocked the Heavenly Duke's attack, the light wheels behind the divine weapon, Heavenly Lord Royal, spun. Under the huge light wheels, Shichilua and the other heavenly venerates looked smaller and smaller. They were just like ants standing in front of their toes. In the light wheels, 20 to 30 heavenly palaces jumped out and formed a great heavenly court. The light wheels were colorful and different. There was Heavenly Lord Fire's Tao Fire Wheel, Heavenly Lord Haoyan's Innate One Qi Wheel, and Lady Changtian's Divine Sense Wheel. Shichilua used the divine weapon Heavenly Venerate Royal to steal the cultivation techniques of the other heavenly venerates. He controlled the 3 gods and performed the secret techniques of different heavenly venerates at the same time. However, he had never used his own secret techniques. This scene made the corner of Qi Tian consorts and Langxian's eyes twitch. However, they did not have time to argue with Shichilua. The 2 heavenly venerates rose into the air from the left and the right. Langxian's body suddenly expanded. He raised his hand and 28 layers of heavens appeared. His divine ability was branded into the 28 layers of void. The path of absolute beginning was like a disc, slashing toward the arm of the heavenly Duke. His divine art of absolute beginning was even more exquisite than divine origin finger, and its power was even more formidable. With a single strike, it sliced open the arm of the heavenly Duke. Qing Tianfei stood on the God execution platform and executed her divine knife of killing aura. The two streams of killing aura became thicker and more agile like dragons. They revolved around the arm of the heavenly Duke, slicing it into pieces and stealing the power of heavenly Tao. The three heavenly venerates worked closely together, and this scene made the hearts of Qin Mu and the rest who were sprinting along the arm of heavenly Duke sink. At the same time they rejoiced in their hearts. If Qin Mu had attacked the three heavenly venerates without caring about anything else, he would probably be dead by now. When the three heavenly venerates worked together and easily severed one arm of heavenly Duke, the hearts of the five of them also sank. Heavenly venerates were too powerful, and if heavenly Duke couldn't withstand the combined attack of three heavenly venerates, how could they fight this battle? In this world, who could withstand the combined forces of three celestial venerables? Furthermore, there were not only three celestial venerables in Xiandu on the surface, there were 5 celestial venerables who had already appeared: Hong, Hua, Chang, Lang and Shi. No one knew if there were other celestial venerables in the dark. At the very least, the Ancestor God King had yet to appear. The Ancestor God King would definitely come here. Tianshu's voice was hoarse as he picked up a jar of wine and poured it into his stomach. He hissed. Founding Emperor told us to hold on for now, but even the Heavenly Duke can't hold on. At that moment, light suddenly shone brightly in Xiandu. Countless starlight surged over and gathered around the Heavenly Duke's severed arm. The Tao voice rumbled as the Heavenly Duke's severed arm grew. The severed arm's 5 fingers split apart as the muscles disintegrated. Bones, blood vessels, and tendons instantly turned into 49 heavenly Tao treasures that floated around the 3 heavenly venerates. These were heavenly Tao treasures that were formed from the Heavenly Duke's physical body. They were extremely powerful. All of a sudden, under the control of the Heavenly Gang treasure, all the heavenly Tao treasures merged into one. It was as if a world of Xuandu was enveloping them. The 3 heavenly venerates and the 3 divine weapons, Heavenly Venerate Royal, were trapped inside. Buzz. The 49 different heavenly Tao treasures shone brightly. The buzzing sound was as if the heavenly Tao was shouting seal, seal, and seal. The Great Seal formed by the combined strength of the 49 heavenly Tao treasures actually suppressed Shi Qilua, Lang Xian and Tianfei, along with the 3 divine artifacts, Heavenly Venerate Royal. Qin Mu and the rest were beaming with joy when they saw this. Just as they were about to speak, cracks suddenly appeared on the Great Seal of Heavenly Tao, and in the next moment it shattered into pieces. Strong! Shahuali couldn't help exclaiming in astonishment. Tianshu was still pouring wine into his stomach, and his calves were still trembling. He shouted loudly. Don't look anymore, quickly charge forward. Heavenly Duke can't stop these tigers and wolves. Everyone increased their speed. During this period of time, they were still unable to run from the Heavenly Duke's arm to the Heavenly Duke's shoulder. The Heavenly Duke's body was too huge. With such a huge body, although he could gather unparalleled strength, there would be a consequence if his body was too big, which was that he could not move. The Heavenly Duke and the Earth Count both had the same weakness. Their huge bodies made their attacks slow when they were facing existences of the same strength, and they did not have many methods to attack. Unless the Heavenly Duke can shrink his body, no matter how strong the Heavenly Duke is in this battle, he will still be bitten to death by ants. Just as Qin Mu thought of this, he suddenly felt the Heavenly Duke's body tremble violently. An intense heavenly wind blew past them, making it difficult for the 5 of them to stand straight. It was another arm of the Heavenly Duke that had struck down beside them, attacking the 3 great heavenly venerates. The 5 of them hurriedly stopped in case they were blown away by the heavenly wind. When the heavenly wind passed, the 5 of them were about to take a step forward when heavenly thunder suddenly rumbled again. The lightning formed a rolling sea of thunder, and a fist broke through the sea of thunder and passed under them. Qin Mu, Butcher, Zhehuali, Luo Wushuang, and the drunk Tianshu raised their heads to look and immediately saw an incomparably spectacular scene. They saw countless arms descending from the sky of Xiandu, They were holding different palm skills, hand skills, fist skills, and hook skills, and they were all aimed at the 3 heavenly venerates. The power contained in each palm was surging and powerful, and each strike had the simultaneous cry of 49 heavenly das. Each strike of the heavenly duke represented the power of great perfection of heavenly court realm. Qi Tianfei executed 2 god execution black knives to receive the first strike and cut off one of the heavenly duke's arms. The second strike sent her in god execution stage flying, and the third strike, fourth strike, and fifth strike came crashing down like a storm. Divine Emperor Lang Xian used all his strength to activate the shriveled Dao fruit. The great absolute beginning divine powers were extremely powerful, as they continuously shattered the heavenly duke's arms and severed his palms. However, at the next moment the Dao fruit circulation was obscure. It was also sent flying by the heavenly Dao palm. He was in midair as the heavenly Dao palm struck his body one after another, causing him to spew blood. Shi Qilua tried her best to control the 3 divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal. However, every punch from the heavenly duke was like a strike from the ancestor god king that unified the 49 heavenly Dao treasures into a heavenly Dao supreme treasure. It smashed the divine weapon Celestial Master Royal so hard that he could not raise his head. It shook her Dao heart and smashed the heavenly palaces behind the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal's head, into pieces. This was the combat strength that the heavenly courts had when they were at the perfected realm. Even though Heavenly Duke didn't have a realm, he represented the strongest battle prowess in Xian capital. Four-faced God, the perfect four-faced divine being without any flaws. Tianshu muttered as he gulped down the wine. Qin Mu's heart sank. He knew that Heavenly Duke wasn't perfect. There were places in the world where Xian capital couldn't shine, and there were also places where Heavenly Dao couldn't reach. At that moment, he saw Celestial Master Hong getting rid of Celestial Master Yu's harassment and flying over. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, and he retracted his gaze from Celestial Master Hong's body. He said solemnly, "Let's continue forward." At that moment, their bodies were being bombarded by Heavenly Duke's attacks. Every divine art of Heavenly Dao was so perfect, and its power was surging. There were shattered void all around them, making it difficult for the 5 of them to move forward. Qin Mu brought them up with great effort, and the 5 of them executed their knife skills to slash apart the void fragments that had come in. Even so, they were soon covered in injuries. In front of them there seemed to be an endless path on the shoulder of the Heavenly Duke, and no one knew when it would end. At that moment violent tremors came from it. Qin Mu looked back through the shattered void, and the light was dazzling. He couldn't see what was happening clearly. The vertical eye in the heart of his brows opened, and he saw Celestial Master Hong breaking through the attacks of Heavenly Duke. His magic power surged into the sky, and his divine arts were marvelous. It was extremely easy for him to break through the divine arts of Heavenly Dao. He had saved Divine Emperor Lang Xian and the rest, so no matter how fierce and overbearing the attacks of Heavenly Duke were, they couldn't hurt him in the slightest. This scene seemed to have been rehearsed many times. He was incomparably familiar with any divine arts of Heavenly Duke, and he had even thought of all the ways to break through the attacks of Heavenly Dao. Of course you can break your divine art, Heavenly Venerable Hong. Are you looking forward to the strength of the Heavenly Duke so much? Qin Mu's expression was gloomy. He turned his head back and said in a hoarse voice, "Continue moving forward. Where are we going?" Shahuali's body was covered in blood as he said furiously, "Cult Master Qin, even if we can walk to the shoulders of the Heavenly Duke, we won't be able to interfere in such an attack. Even the Heavenly Duke himself can't block it. How can we block it?" Luo Wushuang nodded silently and took a glance at the Imperial Citadel divine knife that flashed past in front of him. His shadow in the knife was covered in wounds as he said, "Heavenly Venerable Mu, we have done our best. We can block it." Qin Mu continued to walk forward and said solemnly, "As long as we reach the spirit platform of the Heavenly Duke, we will be able to block it." Suddenly, the sound of a zither sounded out. It floated up, down, left, right, and then west. The chaotic flow of space around Qin Mu and the rest was stirred by the sound of the zither and vanished without a trace. Take advantage of this moment. Let's rush up.
Qin Mu shouted loudly.
The 5 of them increased their speed and rushed forward. Gradually, the shoulders of the Heavenly Duke could be seen. and they could faintly see the face of the heavenly duke hidden in the light. The sound of the zither suddenly stopped, and the sound of the zither strings breaking could be heard. Qin Mu's heart sank, and he couldn't care less about the safety of Heavenly Venerate Moon as he rushed forward frantically. Finally, they came to the shoulders of the Heavenly Duke. The place was calm, and there were no terrifying storms or turbulence in the void. There were also no void fragments. There were numerous magnificent divine cities on the shoulders of the Heavenly Duke, and there were also many gods and devils of Mystic City guarding them. The 5 of them were covered in blood as they barged into the nearest divine city. In the divine city, countless people from Xiandu were kneeling on the ground. They were worshipping the Heavenly Duke statue in the center of the city, and praying for the protection of the Heavenly Duke. Their prayers merged together and turned into a shocking torrent. The reason why they could break through the divine difficulty in their hearts was because of the people's worship of power, fear of the unknown, yearning for the beautiful future but not wanting to work hard. Especially in a place like Xiandu, breaking the gods in their hearts was even more difficult. The Heavenly Duke was in great danger and couldn't even protect himself. Yet the people of Xiandu were still praying, hoping that the Heavenly Duke could protect them. The 5 of them had the blessing of the Heavenly Tao, so the gods and devils guarding the city didn't stop them. Qin Mu quickly came to the center of the city, and Jahuali pulled out his knife to cut down the Heavenly Duke's statue, but he was stopped by Butcher. He shook his head and said, "Let them have some hope. If you cut down the statue of Heavenly Duke, the hope in their hearts will be gone." Jahuali wiped the blood off his face and snorted. What use is it? However, he still put down his demon knife and dragon tooth, and didn't cut down the statue of Heavenly Duke. Qin Mu came to the front of the statue and bowed. "Dao brother, we have something to discuss, so we would like to ask you to shrink your body and bring us to the spirit platform." After a moment there was no movement from the statue. However, the divine city suddenly trembled violently. The earth shook and the mountains shook, and buildings collapsed one after another. Cries filled the city, and the people of Xiandu kowtowed even more anxiously to the god statue of Heavenly Duke. They chanted incantations, and their speed became faster and faster. Their expressions became more and more pious. Heavenly Venerate Hong had personally taken action, and led the 3 great Heavenly Venerates to attack the Heavenly Duke. The destructive power of the Battle of Heavenly Venerate had already started to spread to this place. With Heavenly Venerate Hong, who knew everything about the Heavenly Duke and Heavenly Tao, it wouldn't be long before all of the Heavenly Duke's attacks would be disintegrated by them, and this place would also be destroyed very soon. Qin Mu frowned. He said solemnly, "I'm here on Taoist Brother Great Change's orders to discuss something. Even though Heavenly Tao has influenced your actions and controlled your body, I know that your consciousness is still there. Tao Brother, could it be that you aren't even giving Tao Brother Great face?" After a moment the Heavenly Duke God statue suddenly came to life and opened his eyes to look at him. He smiled and said, "Heavenly Venerable Mu, how detached is Tao Brother Great E?" He was indifferent to everything that happened in Xiandu. It wasn't that he really wasn't concerned, but he was unable to affect his Tao heart. Even existences like you and me were only ripples in his Tao heart, an inconspicuous wave. "He won't let you come." Qin Mu's gaze landed on the eyes of the god statue. "You aren't too easy, so don't use your thoughts to guess what is too easy. You will make a wrong judgment." The god statue fell silent. An even more intense wave crashed into the place. The ground cracked, houses collapsed, and the people of Xuandu in the god city cried out in pain. Qin Mu didn't turn his eyes away, and seemed to ignore everything in the outside world. He only stared into the eyes of the god statue. The god statue of Heavenly Duke sighed. "Even though I clearly know that you are lying to me, I really don't know Taiyi's thoughts, so I can't make an accurate judgment. Forget it, come and see me." Suddenly, the incomparably huge body of Heavenly Duke shrunk, and Heavenly Venerate Hong and the rest who were attacking him were astonished. They saw that the Heavenly Duke that filled almost the entire Xiandu became smaller and smaller, instantly pulling away from them. The space between them and the Heavenly Duke was endless and empty.
Heavenly Venerate Mu.
Heavenly Venerate Hong gave a snort, and his huge sleeves fluttered as he flew toward the Heavenly Duke. Shirchilua Divine Emperor Langxian and Heavenly Consort Changtian hurriedly caught up. The three Heavenly Venerates looked at each other before looking at Heavenly Venerate Hong in front of them, and their gazes flickered. Even if the Heavenly Duke had shrunk to the limit, he was still incomparably huge. Qin Mu brought Zhehuali Butcher, and the rest to rush into the sky and fly toward the heart of the Heavenly Duke's brows. The spirit platform was at the heart of his brows. The starlight there was dense, and it was where his consciousness was gathered. Qin Mu brought the four of them to rush into the dense starlight and land on a platform. The platform was formed by the Heavenly Tao and was like a beautiful jade. There were all kinds of beautiful runic markings of Heavenly Tao on it, and there were also all kinds of treasure forms of Heavenly Tao around it. There were also all kinds of Heavenly Tao markings on it. The five of them had never been here before. When they saw the beautiful buildings and treasure forms, their hearts were filled with astonishment. Qin Mu quickly walked to the Heavenly Palace in the center of the platform and saw the white brows, white beard, and snow-white eyes of the Heavenly Duke Primordial Spirit waiting there. "You're going to die." Qin Mu went straight to the point. "Dead." Heaven Duke's Primordial Spirit welcomed them and invited them into his Heavenly Palace. He said leisurely, "I'm looking forward to this day. I'm looking forward to my death and getting rid of the shackles of the Heavenly Tao. Celestial Master Mu, you're free and unfettered. You're not an ancient god born from the Great Tao, so you don't understand the oppression of the Great Tao. This is my body. Look, can I still use my body now? What do you mean by having no control over my body?" He said dejectedly, "The Tao is born with no control over my body. Now the Heavenly Tao's consciousness has completely taken control of my body, and even my primordial spirit. Although I have my own consciousness, my every action, every word, and every action is controlled by the Heavenly Tao. Do you think that I'm the one controlling my body now? No. It's Heavenly Tao. It's the Heavenly Tao that moves freely in the universe. I'm not free, I'm just a puppet of Heavenly Tao. All of you are envious of the strength of the Heavenly Duke, who is high up in the sky and has boundless power and might, while I'm hating the fact that I was imprisoned in this body the moment I was born, imprisoned in this cage." He was actually a little excited at this moment, but in front of Qin Mu and the rest, he was suppressing his excitement. "I'm even envious of worshipping gods. They were born from worshipping and didn't have as many restrictions as Tao begets God. I'm also envious of the millions of living beings in the greater world. They are as tiny as ants, but they can be free. No, you're not envious of them." Qin Mu stopped. He looked at him coldly. "Why would Heavenly Duke be envious of these ants? Heavenly Duke, your goal is to jump out of the control of Heavenly Tao. When you jump out, you don't want to become an ant, but to maintain the power of Heavenly Duke and remain high and mighty. What you want to do is not to become all living beings, but to rule over all living beings." Wrong. Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit also stopped and turned around to look at Qin Mu and the rest. "You are right to say that I'm not envious of ants, but the second half of your sentence is a huge mistake. I'm not trying to rule over all living things. What I want to do is to transcend. To transcend the Heavenly Tao and reach a realm like Tao Brother Great Change who is free and unrestrained." Qin Mu pointed at him and laughed loudly. "Do you know what Celestial Venerable Hong is thinking? Do you know what Heavenly Venerate Hong meant by transcending the Heavenly Tao is to let the former Heavenly Duke die completely and become the 10th Heavenly Venerate, the ruler of this universe? You can't transcend." Even though he was laughing, there wasn't the slightest joy on his face or in his heart. Butcher frowned. He had a deep understanding of Qin Mu. After all, he was the one who had raised Qin Mu together with the other elders of disabled elderly village. Qin Mu's expression often showed that Qin Mu's concern and importance had reached the point where he had to abandon his rationality. At that moment, Qin Mu only had one method, and that was to not hesitate at all. He quietly turned the hilt of heaven knife, and Zhehuali Luo Wushuang, and the rest immediately understood. Tianshu raised his head and gulped down 2 mouthfuls of wine to boost his courage. They had already made preparations. Even if Qin Mu really shed all pretenses with the Heavenly Duke on the Heavenly Duke spirit platform, even if they were about to face the attack of Heavenly Tao, they wouldn't hesitate. "Of course I know." The primordial spirit of the Heavenly Duke was still as indifferent as before. He said neither too fast nor too slow, "Heavenly Venerate Hong is me, and his thoughts are my thoughts. Heavenly Venerate Mu, do you feel that Heavenly Venerate Hong is just a soul of mine?" He has traveled in the secular world for too long and was polluted by the secular world, thus becoming 10 heavenly venerates? Do you feel that he isn't one heart with me and that his thoughts aren't one body with mine? Do you feel that he is doing those things behind my back? Then you are wrong, extremely wrong. The white light in his eyes floated like rosy clouds. His voice was as loud as a heavenly bell. Heavenly venerate Hong is me. All of his thoughts are my thoughts. All of his actions are my actions, and all of his thoughts are reflected in my heart of heaven without any reservations. His desire and pursuit are also my desire and pursuit. Qin Mu clenched his fists and said in a hoarse voice, his desire and pursuit are a part of your desire and pursuit, right? Heaven Duke's primordial spirit smiled. You have finally understood this point. That's right. All of Celestial Master Hong's thoughts are only a part of my thoughts. He was a part of me and couldn't replace me. When I die, I'll be free from the control of heavenly Tao, and my thoughts will descend. All of his thoughts and desires will become a part of me. Then do you still have the heart of heaven? Do you still have the heart of heavenly Tao? Qin Mu asked. At that time will you become 10 heavenly venerates, or will you still be Heavenly Duke? Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit thought about it and asked, what is heavenly heart? What the heart of heavenly Tao seeks is that the heart of the heavens is my heart, and what I seek is that my heart is the heart of the heavens. The moment he finished speaking, Qin Mu immediately made his move. The moment he did so, it was the 25th heaven of Divine Arts Path Realm. 9 prisons heart-locking path. Countless sharp thorns erupted in Heavenly Duke's spirit platform. They were sharp, and the moment they landed on the ground, they began to expand explosively. They turned into tilted mountains and prison platforms. Layer after layer of prison platforms spun and danced around the primordial spirit of the Heavenly Duke, trapping it firmly in the 9 prison platforms. 9 prison heart locked the Tao heart. Tao heart was not the same as Tao realm. If one's Tao heart was locked, it would affect the performance of Tao realm. It would also affect one's perception of Tao, recovery ability, and cultivation progress. The instant Qin Mu executed 9 prison heart lock path to live on, the heavenly Tao runes on the ground of the spirit platform of the Heavenly Duke buzzed, and the treasure of heavenly Tao on the spirit embryo rumbled. This was the wrath of heavenly Tao. Anyone who dared to attack Heavenly Duke would be controlled by heavenly Tao to kill them. When Qin Mu made his move, Butcher, Zhehuali, Tianshu, and Luo Wushuang all pulled out their knives. 4 knife sounds rang out and 4 figures fell out in all directions. Their cultivation was still not enough, and in front of the majestic power of Heavenly Duke's heavenly Tao, any exquisite knife skills and divine arts would be easily broken. Just as Qin Mu was about to die in the power of heavenly Tao, the treasures of heavenly Tao combined with heavenly Tao imprints suddenly froze. Heavenly Duke primordial spirit trembled, and he tried his best to use his will to resist the will of heavenly Tao. His voice was hoarse as he said, Heavenly Venerate Mu, disperse your divine arts. You can still live, but I can't resist the will of heavenly Tao. Qin Mu looked at Heavenly Duke primordial spirit on 9 prisons platform and clenched his fists. Walk out of this divine art first. Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit took a step forward and walked up. With a single step, thorns grew everywhere. Countless thorns pierced through the walls of 9 prisons platform, making it difficult for him to move an inch. What was even more terrifying was the thorn forest that was targeting his Tao heart. Even if he didn't move an inch, he could still feel the intense pain coming from his Tao heart. Suddenly, Heavenly Duke's spirit platform trembled once more, and the treasures of Heavenly Tao and Heavenly Tao brand blossomed with power once more. Butcher and the rest climbed up and surrounded Qin Mu. They held their knives and looked at the Heavenly Tao light, and the treasures of Heavenly Tao that pervaded the surroundings. The heavenly might here was simply too strong. It was so strong that just one wave was enough to turn them into ashes and not exist anymore. Cult Master Qin, I think you can consider Heavenly Duke's opinion. Zhehuali licked the blood at the corner of his mouth and suggested, there's no need to sacrifice your life and our lives for the person in your heart that you respect but don't respect in reality. Qin Mu looked at the Heavenly Duke primordial spirit in the 9 prisons platform, and hope still shone in his eyes. He really hoped that Heavenly Duke would be able to walk out from the 9 prisons platform to prove that he had extremely deep feelings for the heavenly Tao. Even the 9 prisons platform couldn't lock his Tao heart. Only in this way would Heavenly Duke be the Heavenly Duke, who had the heart of the heavens, and not a heavenly venerable Hong who was ruled by desire. It was also only in this way that he would use all his strength to protect the life of the heavenly duke, even if it meant risking his life. However, the primordial spirit of the heavenly duke didn't walk out of the 9th prison stage as he had expected. Dao heart wasn't as easy to cultivate as the world had imagined. If one wanted to cultivate Dao heart, they needed not only powerful magic power, but also the perception of the great Dao of heaven and earth. They also needed to temper themselves in the mortal world. Heavenly Duke lived in Xiandu, which was too high and far away. His body also resisted the heavenly Dao, so his Dao heart wasn't as strong as Qin Mu had imagined. Heavenly Duke was still suppressing the consciousness of heavenly Dao, and didn't let it attack Qin Mu, which gave him a glimmer of hope. However, as the stabbing pain of 9 prison platform became deeper and deeper, the heavenly Duke also found it harder and harder to resist the consciousness of heavenly Dao. Tianshu, Butcher, Luo Wushuang, and Jahuali gripped the hilt of their knives tightly and stared at their surroundings. Beads of sweat mixed with blood flowed down their foreheads. They didn't urge Qin Mu anymore because as long as Qin Mu made up his mind, he would rarely change. They were Qin Mu's friends and family, so they understood everything that Qin Mu had done. Suddenly, Qin Mu dispersed 9 hell stage, and the pressure of heavenly Dao in the surroundings also dissipated. The bodies of the 4 of them went limp and almost knelt on the ground. Qin Mu still made a change and made a compromise. He didn't persist to the end. He's worried about our lives. Butcher held onto Heaven Knife to prevent himself from falling down. He thought to himself, if Muir was here alone, he would probably use his life to bet that Heaven Guild wouldn't walk out of 9 prison stage. But with us by his side, he doesn't dare to bet. In his heart, our lives are as important as Heaven Duke's. Qin Mu closed his eyes and didn't look at Heaven Duke's primordial spirit that was walking over. When Heaven Duke's primordial spirit came to his side, he still looked like the white-bearded old man who had been chased by Qin Fengqing all over the Qin continent. He had a kind expression and smiled. Heavenly Venerate Mu. The obsession in your heart is too deep. Qin Mu suddenly opened his eyes and revealed a smile. He took out a piece of paper and a brush and spread it on the ground. He bent down and used the brush to walk like a dragon and snake. Soon, he drew a scroll of 9 prison platforms on the paper, and hurriedly rolled it up before handing it over to Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Duke was slightly stunned and caught the scroll. Dao brother, don't open it now. Open it after I leave.
Qin Mu smiled.
In that case, even if Heavenly Dao wants to attack me, they won't be able to attack me. Heavenly Duke Primordial Spirit asked, what will happen when I open this painting? Just like before. Qin Mu didn't hide anything. You will be locked up by 9 prisons platform and fall into it. You will feel the piercing pain of your Dao heart. Heavenly Duke Primordial Spirit asked, what if I don't open this painting and destroy it instead? Then I will leave Mystic City and stop stopping you from seeking death. Qin Mu said solemnly, I'll also dissuade Heavenly Venerate You, and Founding Emperor who's about to rush over. We'll leave together and let you get what you want. Heavenly Duke's Primordial Spirit asked again, if I open this picture, will you do your best to stop me from seeking death, and not let me get rid of the shackles of Heavenly Dao? Qin Mu shook his head. I'll do my best to stop 10th Heavenly Venerate, but I won't stop you from seeking death. There's a difference between the two. If you open this picture, you'll still be my Dao brother. I'll do my best to help you. Heaven Duke's Primordial Spirit pondered for a moment before keeping the picture scroll. Allow me to consider. Qin Mu spread out his divine treasure domain and swept Butcher, Tianshu and the rest away. Heaven Duke's Primordial Spirit watched them leave, and his gaze landed on the picture scroll. After a moment he tied it to the side and didn't open it. However, his gaze would look at the picture scroll from time to time. Outside, the will of Heavenly Dao was controlling his body to fight against Heavenly Venerate Hong and the rest. Heavenly Venerate You Lang Bao, and Heavenly Venerate You were doing their best to stop it. The two sides fought until the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Only this place was still considered quiet. He stood there silently, and a ball of heavenly fire crystal floated on his palm. The crystal continued to grow and rotate, and his face from different angles was reflected on the surface of the crystal. He only needed to flick his finger to burn the picture scroll and destroy Qin-Mu's divine art, but he still hadn't made a decision. Qin-Mu carried Butcher and the rest out of Heavenly Duke's body, and his feet stopped. A resurrection divine boat appeared under his feet, carrying them into layers of void and leaving the battlefield. After a long time, the resurrection divine boat sailed out of the void and dispersed. Qin-Mu sat in the void and watched the battle between Heavenly Duke, Heavenly Venerate Hong, and the rest from afar. He remained silent. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn passed, and he stood up. As if he had nothing on his mind, he took out all kinds of medicinal herbs and refined spirit pills to treat Butcher, Tianshu, and the rest's injuries and remove their injuries from Heavenly Tao. The four of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. Qin-Mu treated their injuries once and checked them carefully to make sure that they didn't have any hidden illnesses before stopping. Shahuali finally couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Heavenly Duke didn't open that painting of yours?" Qin-Mu shook his head and said indifferently, "No." Luo Wushuang suddenly said, "It's impossible for Heavenly Duke to open that painting. If you help him, you will only stop him from breaking free from the control of Heavenly Tao. In order to break free from the control of Heavenly Tao, he set up this trap, so why does he need to break his own trap?" Tianshu nodded. "One hand is right. An existence like the Heavenly Duke is too close to the sky and too far from the earth. He doesn't have such thoughts as us. Call Heavenly Venerate You, and the rest we should go. We don't need to fight to the death for the Heavenly Duke, let alone that he doesn't appreciate our kindness."
Qin-Mu hesitated.
Butcher said, "Why don't we wait a little longer?" Qin-Mu revealed a smile. "Then we'll wait a little longer." The five of them sat down quietly to recuperate and wait quietly. Qin-Mu was still paying attention to the battlefield when the corners of his eyes suddenly twitched. He saw Heavenly Venerate You, Lang Bao, and Heavenly Venerate You getting injured one after another. He sighed and got up. "There's no need to wait anymore. Let's inform them to retreat from Mystic City." Butcher and the rest also got up silently and followed him to the battlefield. At that moment, Heavenly Venerate Hong led the other Heavenly Venerates to attack the Heavenly Dukes one after another, causing the injuries of the Heavenly Dukes to become more and more severe. Even if they had the battle prowess of the great celestial heavens and had endless power, being in the main battlefield of Mystic City, even the Heavenly Dukes wouldn't be able to escape death. Qin-Mu and the rest approached Heavenly Venerate You and the rest. Heavenly Venerate You, and Godly King Lang Bao tried their best to stop Heavenly Venerate Hong and the rest, but their efforts were futile. Heavenly Venerate You, Lang here, stop." Qin-Mu's divine consciousness fluctuated, and he transmitted his voice to the three of them. "There's no need to continue." Suddenly, his body trembled violently, and he looked at Heavenly Duke with an expression of disbelief. He felt that the painting had been opened, and the divine art of 9 prison heart locking path had been triggered. On Heavenly Duke's spiritual platform, Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit looked at the divine art of 9 prison heart locking path that had been triggered. Thorns grew on 9 prison platform and it touched Tao heart. "The road is long and the path of cultivation is long. Perhaps searching up and down is the correct path." He jumped into the 9 prisons platform and an intense pain came from it, sealing his Tao heart. Qin-Mu laughed loudly and his spirit increased by 100 times. With his long knife, he carried Butcher and the rest and rushed towards Heavenly Venerate Fire who was attacking Heavenly Venerate Moon. Founding Emperor walked lightly on the surface of the Sky Sea in the ancestral court. Only when his footsteps landed would the Sky Sea ripple. "The heart of heaven is my heart." When he first arrived here and walked on the surface of the sea suddenly fluctuated. This was how his Tao heart reacted on the Sky Sea. This scene was as stunning as a dream. He could see the flaws in his Tao heart and the inadequacies. These flaws and inadequacies would evolve into stormy waves. He would travel through the stormy waves, subdue his inner demons, nourish his Tao heart, and make his Tao heart purer and purer. Now, as he walked on the surface of the sea, there would no longer be stormy waves on the surface of the sea, only ripples. His Tao heart was calm and steady to the point of being terrifying. He stopped and stared at the surface of the sea and the Sky Sea. The surface of the sea was like a mirror, reflecting everything in Xiandu. He had witnessed the battle and Xiandu ripples appeared beneath his feet, indicating that his Tao heart was not calm. There's no time to go to the 9 prisons platform. I have to go to Xiandu. The founding emperor tidied his clothes, looked at his appearance in the mirror of the sea, and left. Not long after he left, the heavenly venerate Haotian gradually walked out of the void and landed on the surface of the sea. When his feet landed on the surface of the sea, the waves were turbulent, but they quickly returned to calmness. Heavenly venerate Haotian looked away from the direction where the founding emperor had left and landed on the calm surface of the sea, watching the battle in Xuandu. It's time to head to Xuandu. Heavenly venerate Haotian smiled. Behind him the shadow of goddess Taisu appeared, leaving no reflection on the surface of the sea. A true expert should be like the founding emperor. He should be able to keep his composure. Heavenly venerate Haotian strode forward. With a single step, waves rose on the surface of the sea again. However, the waves were not big, and he passed through them as if he did not see them. Although his Tao heart was not as good as the founding emperor's, he was not weak either. If it were anyone else who came to the sky sea, the waves in his Tao heart would probably form a monstrous wave, but he only caused waves. As he moved, the waves gradually became lighter. In this battle, not only will we get rid of the heavenly duke, but we will also get rid of the powerful enemies among the 10 heavenly venerates who have the ability to threaten your position. Goddess Taisu's voice gradually became dimmer behind him, but her voice was clearly heard. It was as if she was whispering in his ear. Heavenly venerate Hong will no longer be a threat to you, nephew. The waves you created in the sky sea are extremely light. It seems that your Tao heart is not weaker than the founding emperor's. Heavenly Master Hao walked toward the sky river, he said. It's just that my Tao heart is stable and weaker than his. But in the Tao realm he is much stronger than me. The founding emperor values the Tao realm while I value strength. In the future I will learn from him in the Tao realm. This is my greatest strength. He smiled slightly, he said leisurely. In the past, I learned Celestial Master Royal's godhood technique and got rid of him. Today, I can learn from the founding emperor's Tao realm and get rid of the founding emperor. My Tao heart is strong enough, so learning the state of Tao is not as difficult as I thought. Taisu's figure was completely hidden. He asked softly, "Then how did you cultivate your Tao heart to this stage?" I suddenly fell into the bottom of the valley at my most glorious moment and lay on my sickbed for thousands of years. Heavenly Master Hao stopped and turned his head to recall the past, he said. During those thousands of years, I was met with countless looks of disdain and ridicule. Even the people who followed me in the past left me one after another, laughing at me and scolding me. After experiencing the ups and downs, my Tao heart became extremely firm and steady. His eyes were filled with immense confidence and conviction. He said in a clear voice, "The reason why I lay on the sickbed for so long was not because of the injuries on my body, but because of the injuries on my Tao heart. When I got up from the sickbed, no one in the world could defeat my Tao heart. From then on I saw through Lung Nuan and the so-called family, friendship and love. From then on I only lived for myself. I eliminated one obstacle after another among my brothers and sisters. Even the crown prince was tricked by me and turned into Xiaowuqi. I became the leader of the demigod tribe, established the dragon cloud's heavenly court, and reigned over all the demigods in the world. I joined hands with Heavenly Venerate Yun to get rid of my father, who was so high and mighty that it seemed impossible to defeat him. I even took over the territory of the demigod tribe and stole the power of the Heaven Alliance step by step. In the past million years my father was defeated, Heavenly Venerate Yun was defeated, Heavenly Venerate Fire was defeated, Heavenly Venerate Moon was defeated, Heavenly Venerate Ling was defeated, and my opponents became fewer and fewer." The confidence and conviction in his eyes turned into a smile. Now it's the founding emperor's turn. And it's the turn of the 10 celestial masters. Celestial Master Hong is the first, followed by Emperor Tai, and then Father God. His Tao heart became more and more stable, and the surface of the sea and the sky did not ripple at all. Taisu slowly revealed her form and said softly, "Then what about the person who made you lie in bed for more than 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years ago, and made you fall from the peak again 1,000,000 years later, losing all your face in the great void?" Her voice seemed to have a strange magic power. The muscles at the corners of Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven's eyes twitched violently, and the calm heavenly sea suddenly surged with raging waves. Huge waves crashed into the sky, and the sky turned black. Thunder and lightning crackled and struck the ground, making it seem as terrifying as hell. After a long while, the abnormal phenomenon in heavenly sea finally calmed down. Heavenly venerate vast heavens fluttering clothes also slowly calmed down. He didn't answer Tai Su's question and walked toward the heavenly river. The two ups and downs in his life were all thanks to Qin Mu. He had been lying on his sickbed for more than 1,000 years, and it was Qin Mu who had caused him sword injuries and injuries to his Tao heart. It was also Qin Mu who had confronted Supreme Emperor in Great Void Land and fought him head-on. Qin Mu had even personally found him, who was recuperating and preparing to take another step forward. Not only had he ruined his plan to take another step forward, he had even chased after him for 600,000 miles. In front of the army of Carefree Village, his face had vanished without a trace. He had no choice but to kneel down and lick Tai Su's feet in order to survive. In order to rise again, he had no choice but to seek the skin of a tiger and had no choice but to rely on Tai Su's power. All of this was thanks to Qin Mu. The only one who could make his Tao heart fall into chaos was Qin Mu. Goddess Tai Su revealed a smile before slowly disappearing. In Xuandu, the heavenly venerate of fire stood on the Tao fire ancestral land. The Tao fire burned fiercely, burning the void and melting everything. The southern emperor Vermilion Bird held such a powerful Tao fire in his hand, but he did not know why. Only he could unleash the power of the Tao fire ancestral land to the extreme. Standing on the Tao fire altar, he seemed to be the ruler of the world. With the altar as the center, the entire universe became the 9 heavens of the altar. With a finger, he could sever layers of space, making heavenly venerate moon tired of dealing with it. His dermic powers were powerful and stronger than heavenly venerate moon's. Now, he was not in a hurry to take heavenly venerate moon's life. Instead, he was wary of heavenly venerate Yu and godly King Lang, especially godly King Langer. He was a great threat to him. The Tao fire ancestral land distorted space, but it could not distort the void. And godly King Langer's attack happened to come from the void. Furthermore, his more important target was the Heavenly Duke. The death of the Heavenly Duke would be a great opportunity for him to split the benefits. Whether he could take another step forward depended on this. Just as he split his attention to look at the Heavenly Duke and was on guard against Heavenly Venerate Langyu, a divine saber came rushing over from the 30 layers of void and struck his face. Blood splattered everywhere. Heavenly Venerate Fire was shocked. The Tao Fire ancestral land was an invincible place for him. Standing here, other than the innate Tao Fire that greatly improved him, the Tao Fire ancestral land also allowed him to see through all attacks. Other than the void, only the void could not be distorted and melted by the Tao Fire. This saber came from the depths of the void and struck his face. This knife was so ruthless that it had practically cut into his head from the middle of his face. No one in this world dared to attack him at such a close distance because the power of Tao Fire ancestral land was too strong. The blazing Tao Fire that burned everything was enough to melt everything, and even Heavenly Venerate Moon couldn't get close. Heavenly Venerate Fire was enraged. He saw the figures of Qin Mu and the rest in the void, and the wheel of flames behind his head spun. The huge wheel of flames cut into the 30th layer of the void, and flames blazed in the middle of the wheel of flames. The heavenly palaces trembled and roared. The projections of his primordial spirit appeared in the heavenly palaces, and they raised their hands. Terrifying divine arts were about to burst forth, burning the 5 people in the void into ashes. At that moment, the figure of God King Lang appeared behind Qin Mu and the rest, and Heavenly Venerate Yu appeared behind him again. The lights shone, and the bodies of Heavenly Venerate Fire's primordial spirit projections trembled violently as they were struck by the lights. They were sent flying out of their respective heavenly palaces, and their projections were destroyed one by one. Even his main primordial spirit was forced to retreat from the Emperor's throne and out of Ling Shao Hall. Knife lights flashed, and they appeared on Tao Fire Ancestors' land. Qin Mu and the rest flew up and down around Heavenly Venerate Fire's tall and mighty body. Heavenly Venerate Fire raised his hand to block, and Divine King Lang-er's divine consciousness rushed over. Heavenly Venerate Fire was blasted into a daze, and Heavenly Venerate Yu's divine art came again. With a loud boom, his primordial spirit was blasted out of his corporeal body and sent flying backward. Ki. His corporeal body was struck hundreds of times in an instant, and fresh blood dripped down. Heavenly Venerate Yu raised his hand and was about to strike him from Xiandu into Yudu when a mighty divine consciousness rushed over. Layers of illusions instantly appeared in front of Heavenly Venerate Yu, and he saw his mother walking toward him. Heavenly Venerate Yu's tears fell like rain, but he didn't attack. At that moment, Divine King Langer gave a shout, and Heavenly Venerate Yu was instantly freed from the illusions. He raised his head to look, and his heart trembled. He saw Heavenly Venerate Palace coming to Xiandu, and looking at Heavenly Venerate Langer from afar. The two women looked at each other. During this period of time, Qin Mu, Butcher, and the rest joined hands, and 5 tiny figures surrounded Heavenly Venerate Fire and slashed him repeatedly. Heavenly Venerate Fire's primordial spirit flew back, and Heavenly Venerate Moon's zither suddenly rang out, teleporting his corporeal body away. Heavenly Venerate Fire's eyes widened, and his primordial spirit hurriedly chased after his corporeal body. The next moment, space split open and Dao Fire Ancestral Land fell into that split space. No one knew where Heavenly Venerate Moon had sent it to. At that moment, Heavenly Venerate Gong smiled slightly, and his divine consciousness burst forth to rush toward Godly King Lang Bao. Godly King Lang Bao's divine consciousness fluctuated, and the divine consciousness of the two girls was about to collide. The divine consciousness contained endless information. As long as their divine consciousness collided, they would be able to know each other's thoughts. There was no need to say anything. Qin Mu's figure appeared between the two of them, and his divine consciousness burst forth, turning into a vast expanse of heavens. He laughed loudly and said, "The two of you are born from the same root, so why is there a need to have a life and death battle?" Qin Mu's divine consciousness was also extremely powerful, but it was still far inferior to Heavenly Venerate Gong and Divine King Lang Bao. The divine consciousness divine arts of the two women had almost completely obliterated his imitation of Supreme Emperor's divine consciousness great overarching heaven in an instant. However, he had also succeeded in preventing the divine consciousness of Heavenly Venerate Gong and Divine King Lang Bao from coming into contact. As long as their divine consciousness didn't collide, it would be difficult for Heavenly Venerate Gong to convince Lang Bao with words. Using words, it wasn't as fast as divine consciousness, and it wasn't as comprehensive as divine consciousness. Furthermore, it could be interrupted by Qin Mu at any time. Lang Bao immediately retracted his divine consciousness to avoid hurting Qin Mu. However, Heavenly Venerate Gong didn't do so. Just as Qin Mu was about to die under the power of her divine art, the sound of a zither suddenly sounded out. Heavenly Venerate Yu plucked the zither strings, and layers of space appeared to block Heavenly Venerate Gong's divine art. Heavenly Venerate Gong frowned slightly, and Heavenly Venerate Fire found his corporeal body. With a flash of fire, he appeared beside Heavenly Venerate Gong with a gloomy expression. Heavenly Venerate Yu had sent the Heaven Dao and Fire Ancestral Land of South Pole away, and even he couldn't sense where Heavenly Venerate Yu had hidden it, making it difficult for the anger in his heart to subside. He hadn't obtained Heavenly Duke's Heavenly Dao yet, had lost the Heaven Dao and Fire Ancestral Land of South Pole Heaven, so he was naturally furious. Qin Mu smiled at Heavenly Venerate Gong and Heavenly Venerate Fire and nodded at them as if they were old friends. Heavenly Venerate Fire, Heavenly Venerate Royal is still alive. You haven't forgotten about this, right? Heavenly Venerate Fire's heart trembled, and his gaze landed on Qin Mu. Even though Qin Mu had his face covered, the black cloth was nothing to Heavenly Venerate. Heavenly Venerate knew who the face under the black cloth was at a glance, so he didn't even need to guess. As for the fact that Heavenly Venerate Imperial was still alive, Heavenly Venerate Fire had long heard of it, but he hadn't personally gone to check it out. However, Qin Mu was a great mage of eternal disaster, and he could even resurrect ancient gods. If Heavenly Venerate Imperial's corpse could be preserved until now, it was indeed possible for Qin Mu to resurrect Heavenly Venerate Imperial. Heavenly Venerate Fire's feelings toward Heavenly Venerate Imperial were truly complicated. Qin Mu suddenly brought up this matter and directly attacked his Dao heart, making him temporarily forget that Heavenly Master Yu had seized the ancestral land of Dao Fire. Qin Mu smiled slightly. There are 11 heavenly masters of the celestial heavens, he said leisurely. Apart from Heavenly Master Shao, who was exiled, the other 10 heavenly masters have most likely come to Xiandu. The celestial heavens are empty. If I were Heavenly Master Yu, I would take this opportunity to go to the celestial heavens and undo the seal of clove incense hall to steal my remnant soul. Fire Heavenly Master's expression was volatile, like a bonfire dancing in the dark night, illuminating his face. His face was sometimes bright and sometimes dark. He looked at the battlefield of Xuandu. Celestial Master Hong and the other 4 Celestial Masters were attacking the Heavenly Duke with the divine weapon, Celestial Master Royal. Their attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. It was only a matter of time before the Heavenly Duke was defeated. At this time, the 6 Celestial Masters had gathered in Xuandu. Only Hao, Yan Su and Ancestor did not show up. Heavenly Venerate Fire's voice was hoarse as he said, Heavenly Consort Yan, Heavenly Venerate Hao, and Heavenly Venerate Su are still in Heavenly Court, so he doesn't have the slightest chance.
Qin Mu smiled.
When Heavenly Duke dies, which Heavenly Venerate will not come and get a share? When that time comes, 10th Heavenly Venerate will appear in Xiandu like a pack of wolves, and this will be Heavenly Venerate Royal's chance. Don't you wish for him to seize back his remnant soul, and let the former Heavenly Venerate Royal return? He stared at Fire Celestial Master's face, and did not let go of any of the changes in Fire Celestial Master's emotions. His words were like the founding emperor's sword and the butcher's knife, pointing straight at the flaw in his heart. I still remember that you once said that the person you respect the most is him, and the person you respect the most is him. You've always called him Big Brother and vowed to avenge him. At this moment he has already resurrected. As long as he takes back the remnant soul, he can make a comeback. Qin Mu said in delight, now your chance has come. You can sneak attack and kill Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven, so I think your Big Brother you will be very pleased. Heavenly Venerate Gong was stern and quietly separated from Heavenly Venerate Fire. The flame will spun behind Heavenly Venerate Fire's head and shone on his face, causing his expression to darken. Even if Heavenly Venerate Royal is resurrected, he won't be able to open Incense Hall. I've never thought about the matter of not having a shadow. Today is the battle to get rid of Heavenly Duke, and anyone who obstructs me will die. His killing intent surged as his gaze landed on Qin Mu. Heavenly Venerate you and the rest, he said coldly, including all of you. Even though he said so, he could still sense that Heavenly Venerate Gong was extremely wary of him. It was impossible for the two of them to join hands to face the enemy without any obstacles. Qin Mu's words had created a huge gap between him and Heavenly Venerate Gong. They were in a very passive position. Qin Mu was good at attacking the heart. When facing an opponent like him, he would often make people feel that he was their friend and not an opponent who stood on the opposite side of them. He was like a close friend to them and understood them very deeply. He would start from their hearts, analyze their thoughts and actions, and give them suggestions that seemed bright. However, unknowingly you had fallen into his trap. Among the 10 Heavenly Venerates, many of them had faced Qin Mu's battle of the heart, and now it was Heavenly Venerate Fire's turn. Suddenly, Xiandu trembled violently and the stars scattered. Everyone was astonished and looked over. They saw Heavenly Duke shrinking his corporeal body and moving his feet, causing an intense commotion in Xiandu. All along, Heavenly Duke's true body was incomparably vast, and he had always stood there without moving. Even when he was besieged by Heavenly Venerate Hong and the other 4 great Heavenly Venerates, he had never moved his feet. If he moved his feet, it would cause the stars in the world to shift and cause a drastic change in the world. And now, he had been forced to move his body to dodge the attacks of the 4 great Heavenly Venerates. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched. Heavenly Duke, you still haven't escaped from 9 Prisons platform? You should be able to comprehend Heaven's heart. After all, you are the incarnation of Heaven Tao and have been immersed in it for so long. As long as you comprehend Heaven's heart and comprehend the 24th Heavenly Tao realm of Heaven Tao, you will be able to escape. As a Tao begets a God, Heavenly Duke was born from Heaven Tao. In his lifetime he could only have great attainments in Heaven Tao, so Heavenly Duke was the existence with the highest possibility of comprehending the heart of Heaven Tao. He was also the existence with the highest possibility of raising the heart of heavenly Tao to 24 heavens. If Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit comprehended the heart of heaven, even if he jumped out of the shackles of Heavenly Tao, he would still follow the Heavenly Tao and not become Heavenly Venerate Hong, who was swallowed by the desire for fame and power. This was Qin Mu's expectation. As long as Heavenly Duke's primordial spirit could jump out from the 9 prisons platform, Heavenly Venerate Hong wouldn't become the master of Heavenly Duke's consciousness. He wouldn't be able to bring disaster to the world, and he might become his Tao friend. As Heavenly Duke's cultivation of Tao realm became higher and higher, Heavenly Duke Hong's dangerous personality consciousness would become weaker and weaker, and it wouldn't affect Heavenly Duke much. The key was whether Heavenly Duke could raise his Tao realm and heavenly heart to the extent that he could break through the restrictions of the 9 prisons platform in such a short period of time. Heavenly Duke Fire's gaze flickered, and he moved his gaze away from Qin Mu and the rest to Heavenly Duke Hong and the other Heavenly Venerates who were besieging Heavenly Duke Hong. It was the same for Heavenly Venerate Gong. The situation had already reached a crucial moment. If the 4 great Heavenly Venerates joined hands, the Heavenly Duke wouldn't be a match for them, and would definitely be killed by the 4 great Heavenly Venerates. And the moment they killed the Heavenly Duke would be the most crucial moment for them to fight for benefits. If they arrived too late, they would only be able to drink the water to wash their feet, let alone the moon. Heavenly Venerate Fire suddenly turned into a streak of fire and sped toward Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Venerate Moon moved, and the sound of the zither rang out, blocking the way in midair. The two moved quickly in Xuandu, and the sound of the zither and the Tao fire clashed fiercely. Heavenly Venerate Moon suddenly plucked the zither strings, and the sound of the zither was filled with killing intent. Tens of thousands of intersecting dimensions trapped Heavenly Venerate Fire inside. Flames burned around Heavenly Venerate Fire. He melted the space and passed through the layers of space. Then he saw the peach forest in front of him. The peach blossoms were in full bloom. Heavenly Venerate Fire snorted and burned the peach forest completely. The peach forest turned into scorched earth. Heavenly Venerate Fire landed on the ground and took a few quick steps. He looked around and the corners of his eyes twitched. He said sternly, "Heavenly Venerate you." What entered his eyes were the mountains and rivers of the Yuan world, the sun and moon. He had passed through the spatial divine ability set up by Heavenly Venerate Moon and arrived at the Yuan world from Mystic City in an instant. It would take him more than a month to travel from the Ancestral Court to Mystic City. Even if he set off immediately, it would probably take him more than a month to arrive at Mystic City. By the time he arrived, the daylily would be completely cold. Heavenly Venerate Fire was driven mad and extremely furious. However, he felt deeply powerless. If he was sent here, he would no longer have the great fortune of being sent to Mystic City. When he had Tao Fire Ancestral Land, Heavenly Venerate Moon was unable to send him away. Tao Fire Ancestral Land distorted space and the greater world was in the 9 heavens of the Ancestral Land, so Heavenly Venerate Moon's divine arts couldn't do anything to him. However, after being ambushed by Qin Mu, Heavenly Venerate Moon took the opportunity to send Tao Fire Ancestral Land away. So he was helpless. Then I should return to the Heavenly Court and wait for Heavenly Venerate you by the side of incense-wearing Hall. At that moment he suddenly felt the aura of the Heavenly Tao. He could not help but feel his heart stir as he looked in the direction of the Heavenly Tao's aura. The shady firmament world. Heavenly Lord Fire flew over the soles of Heavenly Duke's feet. This Heavenly Tao's aura. Could it be that the bold and straightforward ancestor God King with thick eyebrows and big eyes is in the shady firmament world right now? He can't be judged by his appearance. In Xiandu, Heavenly Venerate Gong also stood up and charged at Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Venerate Yu and Godly King Lang were sent out at the same time to intercept him. When Heavenly Venerate Gong saw Heavenly Venerate Yu send Fire Heavenly Venerate away, her heart couldn't help but tremble. She wasn't afraid of Heavenly Venerate Yu. In a one-on-one fight, Heavenly Venerate Yu's spatial divine power couldn't be used in front of her. She could interfere with Heavenly Venerate Yu's thoughts before he used his divine power. She could easily interrupt Heavenly Venerate Yu's divine art. Heavenly Venerate Yu wouldn't be able to send her away. However, if Heavenly Venerate Yu and God King Lang were added in, and Qin Mu was eyeing her like a tiger eyeing its prey, she would be in danger. Qin Mu brought Butcher and the rest and rushed toward the lonely Heavenly Venerate Gong in excitement. At the same time, Heavenly Venerate Yu exiled Heavenly Venerate Fire into the origin world and let out a sigh of relief. She immediately rushed toward Heavenly Venerate Gong as well. Heavenly Venerate Gong's expression was solemn as she let out a shout. Behind her, layers of heavenly palaces stood tall, and the 35 heavenly palaces joined together to form a great heavenly court. She had been heavily injured by Founding Emperor because he had ambushed her the moment she had stepped into the treasured palace of soaring heavens, giving her no chance to react. However, her abilities were definitely not the weakest among the 10 heavenly venerates. If it was any one of the 10 heavenly venerates who had been ambushed by Founding Emperor, it would be an amazing achievement if they didn't die. After all, even though Founding Emperor's cultivation couldn't compare to the 10 celestial venerables, the offensive power of his sword path had surpassed the 10 celestial venerables. Even Heavenly Venerables Vast Heaven, Shao Heaven, and Qing Tian Consort didn't dare to say that their divine arts were stronger than Founding Emperor's sword path when they were at their peak. Qin Mu rushed over and suddenly stopped. He looked at Heavenly Venerate Gong with a solemn expression and counted the number of heavenly palaces behind her. He was a little suspicious. How did Founding Emperor do it? To make him severely injure Celestial Master Gong. He couldn't even handle such a small matter. Heavenly Venerate Gong's heavenly palace didn't show any signs of being injured, and her aura didn't show any signs of weakening. There wasn't a single injury on her body, and her primordial spirit was also intact. Founding Emperor had gone to kill Heavenly Venerate Gong because of Qin Mu's instructions. If Heavenly Venerate Gong had been severely injured by Founding Emperor and didn't have apothecary's attainments in the path of medicine, it would have been impossible for him to recover so quickly. Qin Mu opened the vertical eye in the heart of his brows and examined Heavenly Venerate Gong. He instantly saw through the mystery. There were all kinds of hidden injuries hidden in Heavenly Venerate Gong's body, like sword injuries. They should have been left behind by Founding Emperor's sword path. But someone had used a strange power to wipe them away and let her body recover back to normal. However, Heavenly Venerate Gong had cultivated diligently for 1,000,000 years, and her corporeal body was incomparably strong. Even though that person had repaired her corporeal body and wiped away the injuries from Founding Emperor's sword path, he was unable to make her corporeal body recover to its strongest state. Not only that, Heavenly Venerate Gong's 35 heavenly palaces were also filled with traces of being repaired. The places that had been repaired weren't as strong as other places. Heavenly Venerate Gong's primordial spirit was the same. Founding Emperor's attack was extremely ruthless, and he had almost used his sword path to bury Heavenly Venerate Gong. The vertical eye in the heart of Qin Mu's brows was the strongest divine eye in the world. It used the horn of Earth Count as the iris, the crystal of Heavenly Duke's heavenly Tao to fill the room in front of the divine eye, the pupils of Taiji Raw Stone, and the retina of Tai's chaotic eggshell. Earth Count of Heavenly Duke had personally entered Heavenly Tao and Great Tao of Yudu to refine and strengthen his divine eye. Furthermore, there were dew spots on Great Change Tao Tree in his eyes. Even if Earth Count of Heavenly Duke stood in front of Qin Mu, he could easily see the operating structure of Heavenly Tao and Great Tao of Yudu, much less Heavenly Venerate of Insight Palace. To him, Insight Palace heavenly venerates primordial spirit, corporeal body, and the secrets of Heavenly Palace was just a small test. The only people in the world who have the ability to do this, apart from Grandpa Apothecary and me, is Tai Su. Qin Mu understood in his heart. Apothecary relies on the path of medicine, and my path of medicine is inferior. I can only rely on the path of medicine, the path of creation, and the divine arts of not easy, and also the path of supreme truth to heal the sword wounds left behind by Founding Emperor. If I work together with Grandpa Apothecary to heal her, there won't be any hidden dangers. As for Goddess Taisu, I need Celestial Master Gong to beg and kneel before her. This is a huge hidden danger. He could clearly see that Celestial Master Gong seemed to have recovered to his perfect state. However, there would always be losses. Taisu could return the sword wounds to her at any time. It could be said that the life and death of Celestial Master Gong was completely in Taisu's hands. Heavenly Master Hao should be the same, right? His injuries back then were even more serious than Celestial Master Gong's. What worried him even more was that the mineral vein that Heavenly Venerate Gong controlled was the Taisu mineral vein. Taisu obtaining Heavenly Venerate Gong was equivalent to obtaining the Taisu mineral vein. Obtaining the Taisu mineral vein was equivalent to obtaining the Taisu divine stone and the Taisu raw stone. Taisu's strength was originally not strong, but now I'm afraid she can advance by leaps and bounds. The moment he was distracted, Heavenly Venerate Gong, Godly King Lang Bao, and Heavenly Venerate You exchanged hundreds of blows. Heavenly Venerate You took a step forward, he said solemnly. You Lang this, you guys retreat. I'll hold her back. You guys go and support Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Duke can't hold on much longer. Heavenly Venerate You and Godly King Lang this immediately left and flew toward Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Venerate You blocked Heavenly Venerate Gong's path and said, Heavenly Venerate Mu, you go too. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. It was naturally good for Heavenly Venerate You to personally block Heavenly Venerate Gong and prevent him from coming into contact with Godly King Lang this. However, without Lang this visualization of you do, Heavenly Venerate You would be exposed in Xian Du. His abilities and divine arts would probably be greatly reduced. You survive. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and rushed in the direction of Heavenly Duke. Heavenly Venerate You was expressionless, and the surroundings of his face were like the bark of an old tree. Among Heavenly Venerates, you are the weakest, so you should be more careful of yourself. Heavenly Venerate Gong let out a long sigh. Without Heavenly Venerate You and God King Lang here, she instantly felt no pressure and looked at Heavenly Venerate You. A rare smile appeared on her face. You were the person who created an era. You and the other Heavenly Venerate Long Han created the Divine Treasure Trove system together. Your contribution is the most crucial. You opened the Divine Treasure Trove of life and death. She rarely admired others at this moment. She was full of admiration for Heavenly Venerate You. The world doesn't know how useful the Divine Treasure Trove of life and death is. They often neglect your achievements. Once the Divine Treasure of life and death is opened, one will understand life and death. That's why the Divine Bridge Divine Treasure jumped into the Heavenly Palace and lived as long as the heavens. Without the Divine Treasure of life and death, even if others can cultivate to the level of a god, they cannot have endless lifespan. She suddenly launched an attack. 35 heavenly palaces were scattered, forming a heavenly court that was different from the real heavenly court of Long Han. 35 heavenly palaces actually formed the shape of a horn. The lower part of her heavenly court was wide, the upper part was narrow, and the layers were progressive. At the top of the bugle was her main heavenly palace's skyscraping treasured palace, where her primordial spirit was stationed. This was a bugle made of countless buildings. It was magnificent and unbelievable. However, the people in the world will not be grateful for what you have done. The Earth Count has also opened the divine treasure of life and death, giving the people in the world a chance to escape from life and death and restricting you for 1,000,000 years. You, the people in the world, will only hate you because you are a messenger of death, and they will be afraid of you. Celestial Master Gong no longer hid her cultivation and strength. Her weapon was the whip. In the immemorial era, the creator female Xian clan was a female tribe that was famous for its battle. This creator race tamed huge beasts and stood on their backs to conquer the world. The women's battle strength was extremely strong, and they had a fanatical desire to battle. The ancient god they worshipped was the West Emperor White Tiger. The West Emperor White Tiger was revered as the ancient god of battle. It was an ancient god created by them through visualization and worship. The appearance of the West Emperor White Tiger was very similar to the Gong Fu God King back then, and the weapons of the West Emperor were whips and horns. Because the female Xian clan tamed the immemorial giant beast, the whips and horns could control the giant beast. Therefore, Celestial Master Gong also used these two weapons as his celestial treasures. Heavenly Venerate Gong's battle intent towered into the sky as she executed her technique. The sound of the horn came from the 35 heavenly palaces, making her chi and blood boil as her battle prowess rose in a straight line. The whip in her hand was ever-changing, sometimes long and sometimes short, sometimes thick and sometimes thin, sometimes soft and sometimes hard, sometimes straight and sometimes bent. This divine whip was forged from the dragon veins of the ancestral court, and a huge divine golden mountain range was forged into a whip before transforming into a divine dragon. If Qin Mu was here, He would definitely recognize that this whip was the divine spear that had once been in the hands of Supreme Emperor. Its power was extremely strong, and it had once competed with Gu Zhao's Emperor Sword, which had been transformed by the Heavenly Emperor. This divine spear had been forged from the dragon veins of the ancestral court by Supreme Emperor, and he had given it to Nuoxin clan as a betrothal gift. Later on, Supreme Emperor had destroyed Nuoxin clan and taken back the betrothal gift. After Gong Gong captured Da Hong, the divine spear had fallen into Gong Gong Gong's hands and was refined into a whip. She had trapped Da Hong on the pillar in front of her palace, and she had used this whip to whip him day and night to vent her anger. You've been trapped by the Earth Count all these years and turned into a messenger of death. You've been hiding from the world and have long fallen behind. Gong Tianzuan's whip changed, and at the same time, she released her spiritual sense to create layers of illusions. Her words attacked her heart, and her spiritual sense illusions were even more terrifying. As long as there was a slight flaw in Yu Tianzuan's Dao heart, he would be at her mercy if he fell into her illusions. Yu Tianzuan's figure was ethereal and he kept retreating. He did not confront her head-on. He had to avoid the illusory realm of heavenly venerate Gong. However, Xiandu's restriction on his strength was too great. The heavenly Dao restrained his cultivation and suppressed his mana. His cultivation base was already inferior to heavenly venerate Gong, and now it was even worse. Whoosh! He couldn't dodge in time and was locked by the long whip. The head of the long whip turned into a dragon's head, biting his body and throwing him around. At the same time, the divine sense of Celestial Master Gong turned into layers of illusions, throwing him into the illusion. In the illusion, Celestial Master Yu saw his mother again. His mother was washing clothes. She turned her head and gave him a loving smile. The early spring sun shone down, peaceful and beautiful. Although he was locked by the long whip and the dragon head bit his body, he did not feel any pain in the illusion. His heart was calm and he even felt a little happy. Even though he found his mother's soul in Yudu and lived with her for millions of years, he could not feel her touch. His mother could not touch his face, his body, or the sunlight. His mother did not taste anything, and his mother did not feel anything while she was in her soul state. His mother often cooked for him, and all she cooked was yuan bao candles. His mother also ate yuan bao candles. His mother had died a long time ago, and there was no warmth at all. He dreamed of reviving his mother, but he still couldn't do it. However, in Celestial Master Gong's illusion, he felt that his mother had come back to life, and she had returned to the sweet and warm days of the past. He could feel the warmth of his mother's palm. At this moment he was extremely happy. Boom! The dragon vein divine whip bit onto his body, and he swung it fiercely, smashing through the planets of Xuandu. Celestial Master Gong flew over and the bugle horn sounded. Her immortal soul stood on the top of the bugle heavenly court and attacked Celestial Master Yu one after another. Under her attack, Celestial Master Yu's flesh and blood flew everywhere. Although his body was badly damaged, he still smiled. In history, all the people who died at the hands of Celestial Master Gong died with a smile. Celestial Master Gong let out a long cry, and his body was almost destroyed. Celestial Master Yu's flesh and blood exploded, revealing his bones and heart. In the illusion, Celestial Master Yu seemed to have returned to a teenager. He snuggled in his mother's arms and enjoyed a moment of peace. Celestial Master Gong shook the whip and sent him flying. Then the whip's dragon head bit his exposed heart. In the illusion, Heavenly Venerate Yu looked up at his mother's indelible face. She was weak but peaceful. 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks. Mother, I remember this scene. I remember this morning. Of course, Heavenly Venerate Yu remembered this day. On this morning, his mother washed his old clothes as usual. Then, she sat in front of the thatched cottage under the sun and mended his clothes. In the pot was the cooked rice. She was always like this, and on this day she did all this as usual. Then she fell down. On her deathbed, she touched the young man's face and said to him, "I'm leaving, what should you do?" But she still let go and left. Heavenly Venerate Yu would never forget the sunlight of that morning. He would never forget what his mother said to him before she left. He became Heavenly Venerate Yu to bridge the gap between mortals and Yudu, so that he could see his mother again. In his mother's arms, Heavenly Venerate Yu, who had returned to his youth, looked at his mother's face quietly. He raised his hand and put on the ghost face mask on the back of his head. He put it on slowly. The moment he put on the mask, his old and dilapidated body actually burst out rays of shocking divine light to repair his body. Celestial Master Gong was shocked and hurried to speed up the attack. However, endless divine power burst out from the body of the old man who had turned into a young man. She saw an extremely majestic primordial spirit, the strongest primordial spirit she had ever seen. In the illusion, Celestial Master Yu, who was a young man, was holding his mother's body while wearing the ghost mask that his mother had bought for him. "Mother, I'm going to do my own thing." He let go of his mother's body and raised his head. The illusion started to shatter. "Mother, you don't have to worry about me anymore. I have my own friend now," he said to his mother, who was gradually disappearing. "I'm going to complete the task entrusted to me by my friend." Celestial Master Gong knew that something was wrong. Celestial Master Yu's body was rapidly recovering, and he quickly changed from an old man to a young man. The original Celestial Master Yu was like an old man. He was known as the Messenger of Death for this reason. He stayed in Yudu all year round. His physical body had long withered and lacked vitality. Moreover, he appeared very dark. He would always appear in the dark, appearing alone under the light of the lantern, with paper men and paper horses stacked on top of each other. His reputation was notorious. In the myriad realms of the heavens, the mention of the Messenger of Death was enough to make the most courageous demon god keep silent in fear, enough to make a child stop crying. But now Celestial Master Yu had turned back into a youth. The gloomy and dreary aura had disappeared from his body. It was as if he had become the youth who was somewhat isolated from the crowd and liked to sit by the side of the water alone, rub a magical ability, and throw it into the jade lake to fry fish. He was not the kind of young man who would become muscular with just a little strength. On the contrary, he was very thin and weak. His face was a little pale, and he did not give off a great sense of threat. However, compared to the time when he was frying fish by the jade lake, he was much more cheerful and confident. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. The divine ability does not age, but the mind is old. When you return, you will still be a young man. Heavenly Venerate Yu slowly raised his head. Behind him, the incomparably vast primordial spirit also slowly raised its head. Heavenly Venerate Gong looked up. The vastness of this primordial spirit was enough to fight against existences like Heavenly Duke and Earth Count. For a long time, everyone had thought that Heavenly Venerate Yu had already declined. Heavenly Venerate Yu had remained silent in Yudu and hadn't come into contact with the divine arts, paths, and skills of the outside world. He hadn't experienced the Dragon Han Revolution, the Scarlet Revolution, the Emperor's Reform, the Founding Emperor's Reform, and Eternal Peace's Reform. His paths, skills, and divine arts were definitely outdated and couldn't keep up with the times. However, the 10 heavenly venerates of Heavenly Court didn't ignore him. They established the Nether Capital and let Son of Heavenine take charge of it to stand on equal footing with Yudu, bringing the dead living beings, gods, and devils to the Nether Capital. Apart from weakening Yudu's strength, the goal of Heavenly Court was to prevent Heavenly Venerate Yu from using the dead to grasp the paths, skills, and divine arts of the world. Only Heavenly Venerate Long Han 9 understood how terrifying the potential of one of the 9 Heavenly Venerates was. That was why Heavenly Venerate Hao and Heavenly Venerate Fire would not give him the chance to grow. However, everyone overlooked one thing. Hades had billions of clones in Hades. His clones were spread throughout all the heavenly worlds to receive the dead. Each of these clones had the strength of an ordinary god or demon. The divine arts and Tao techniques that the dead had brought to Yudu had allowed him to grow. But what truly allowed him to grow to a level that others could not imagine was his clones. He was originally Yutian Venerate, whose soul had established a Tao. He was the first peerless genius to break through the boundary between life and death. After he came to Yudu, his primordial spirit had also become stronger and stronger. Billions of clones were the manifestation of the strength of his primordial spirit. In this battle in Xuandu, Yudu was already empty. All the messengers of death were taken back by him. When these messengers of death returned to his original body, his primordial spirit was enough to shock the universe. In front of the palace Heavenly Venerate, the moment this primordial spirit raised its head, The deep and melodious great Tao of Yudu burst out with Tao sounds. It was like the ravings of countless souls, like mortals chanting scriptures in temples. It was filled with mystery and unfathomable. 64 different great Tao of Yudu gathered behind his head. His primordial spirit and the great Tao of Yudu contained in his primordial spirit were equal to the heavenly Tao in Xian. They divided Xiandu and formed an independent Yudu. Maybe Heavenly Venerate Su isn't the perfect candidate to inherit Earth Count. Maybe he is. This terrifying thought suddenly appeared in Celestial Master Gong's mind. Heavenly Venerate Yu's Yuan Shan was so vast and powerful that it made her shudder when she faced Earth Count. Although she was no longer the creator and had long made up for the weakness of the creator race's soul, the shudder surged into her heart when she faced Heavenly Venerate Yu. It made her heart twitch and her muscles tremble. Her bones trembled. Even her Yuan Shan was trembling. However, Heavenly Venerate Long Han 9 has passed. Now it's the 10 Heavenly Venerates world. Heavenly Venerate Gong let out a loud roar. The sound of a bugle horn came from the heavenly court formed by 35 heavenly palaces. It made her blood boil and her battle prowess soared. This woman was extremely valiant. She was one of the few people who dared to kill Tai Di in absolute beginning. Even if Heavenly Venerate Yu had the strongest primordial spirit in history, she was fearless and dared to fight. The ancestral court's divine whip in her hand shook. It was as straight as a spear. She pointed it at Heavenly Venerate Yu and charged forward. Even if Heavenly Venerate Yu had the strongest primordial spirit, she had fallen into the illusion of her spiritual sense just now. She must have been severely injured by her storm-like attack. Her strength must have been greatly reduced. She used the spear technique of Emperor Tai. With a thrust of the spear, the treasure transformed from the ancestral court's dragon vein instantly revived like a dragon vein that was tens of thousands of miles long. It fluctuated in the air and shook the space. The majestic mountain body was like a dragon scale. The dragon body was meandering, and the mountain roots were like dragon claws. It was extremely ferocious. This strike was majestic. Together with the powerful magic power of the great heavenly court formed by the 35 heavenly palaces, her strength had been raised to the peak of her lifetime. Heavenly Venerate Yu's magic power was definitely far inferior to hers. This was the key to her victory. She wanted to use her own mana and treasures to beat Heavenly Venerate Yu back from the youth to the old age, from the cheerful to the depressed. Buzz! A tremor came, and lines of wrinkles appeared on Heavenly Venerate Gong's pretty face. Buzz, 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 another tremor came, and the tremor formed wrinkles on her face. The wrinkles actually could not be smoothed out. She saw an extremely shocking scene. As the tremor came, a second Yudu world appeared behind Heavenly Venerate Yu's magnificent immortal soul brain, followed by a third, fourth, and fifth. Hades world after Hades world spread out, and the corners of Gong Tianzuan's eyes twitched violently. These Hades worlds were layers of heavens, just like Founding Emperor's Heavens of Sword Tao. However, Founding Emperor's Heavens of Sword Tao was an acquired great Tao. It was a domain that no one had ever stepped foot into before. Founding Emperor had to perfect it step by step and open it up. As for Hades, Heavenly Venerate's Heavens of Hades, he had directly comprehended it from the 64 great Tao of Hades. From the very beginning, Hades Heavenly Venerate cultivated the great Tao of Hades. In order to resurrect his mother, he had worked harder than anyone else. He was even more serious. Compared to Founding Emperor, he had a huge advantage. Founding Emperor created Sword Tao out of nothing, and it was extremely difficult. However, he had Earth Count by his side. If he did not understand, he could ask Earth Count. Of course, if Earth Count did not understand, he could also ask him. He had stayed in Hades for millions of years. During these millions of years, his attainments in the great Tao of Hades were so deep that he was already on par with Earth Count. The only thing that was inferior to Earth Count was that his body was not as strong as Earth Count's. Compared to an innate god like Earth Count, his body was much weaker. That's right, the reason why Founding Emperor could ignore my divine perception illusion is because his Tao heart is too strong. His Tao heart Tao realm has already cultivated to the 35th heaven. Celestial Master Gong gritted his teeth and did not retreat. He used all his strength and infused it into the spear. He continued to thrust forward towards Celestial Master Yu. He thought to himself, Even Celestial Master Mu could not escape from my divine sense illusion, but Celestial Master Yu managed to escape. This shows that his Tao heart is above Celestial Master Mu's. However, it was clear that this was Celestial Master Yu's first time coming into contact with the Tao realm, so he did not put in much effort in this aspect. This was his first time raising his Tao realm, so the speed at which his Tao realm opened was relatively slow. After all, it had not been long since the founding emperor introduced the Tao realm cultivation system, and even the 10th Heavenly Venerate did not have very high attainments in this aspect. This time, Heavenly Venerate Yu was equivalent to comprehending Tao before the battle to raise his Tao realm. He was not prepared beforehand, which gave Heavenly Venerate Gong hope. Buzz buzz buzz. Heavenly Venerate Gong's spear stabbed in front of Heavenly Venerate Yu, and the Hades world behind his primordial spirit had already reached as many as 18 layers. His immortal soul extended his large hand to meet Heavenly Venerate Gong's spear strike. Heavenly Venerate Gong gave a muffled groan. The large spear in her hand was bent down, and her body was also bent down. Mana, the mana that she was proud of. The mana contained in the 35 heavenly palaces was actually still inferior to the mana contained in Heavenly Venerate Yu's incomparably large immortal soul. Her legs were bent, and the heavenly court horn sounded, which increased her chi and blood again. Heavenly Venerate Gong straightened his body, and his long spear turned into a long whip, which twirled around Heavenly Venerate Yu's immortal soul's arm. Meanwhile, she flew with both feet and kicked at Heavenly Venerate Yu's head. Buzz! Another wave of fluctuation came, and the 19th wrinkle appeared on Heavenly Venerate Gong's face, which made him look like an old woman. Her physical body was aging, and her vitality was draining. She was shocked, but her strength did not decrease. Her legs were filled with terrifying explosive power. As long as she kicked Celestial Master Yu's head, it would only take an instant, she could kick Celestial Master Yu's head to pieces. At this moment, the 19th Yudu world behind Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit slowly opened up. The immortal soul's palm was wrapped with a long whip. With a strong shake, Heavenly Venerate Gong's body was involuntarily sent flying. Then with a whoosh he was pulled back. Heavenly Venerate Yu's immortal soul's other arm met her head-on. A huge fist smashed fiercely onto her body. Boom! A terrifying throbbing erupted in all directions. The snow-white light blade formed a ring that rapidly expanded, causing the stars in the entire Xuandu to buzz and jump. Celestial Master Gong flew backward and retracted her long whip. She exerted force with her feet, and her body was almost flat in the starry sky, leaving 2 spatial cracks in it. She stopped her retreating figure. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth, and the long whip twirled around her right hand. The sound of her heavenly court's bugle horn became even louder, causing her chi and blood to surge even higher. Celestial Master Gong strode forward like a flying tiger descending the mountain. She pounced ferociously, and her fighting spirit became even stronger. Buzz! Another vibration came from the front. Another wrinkle appeared on her face, the 20th wrinkle. Behind Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit, the 20th level of the Hades world slowly opened. Celestial Master Gong rushed in front of him. His long whip danced like a dragon, interspersing with attacks. All kinds of divine abilities flew out from his fluttering sleeves. They flew out from between her eyebrows. From time to time, the long whip even flew out from her sleeve. It was hard to defend against. Celestial Master Yu's immortal soul waved her hands, blocking all of her attacks. She could not penetrate her immortal soul's defense and attack Celestial Master Yu's real body. Celestial Master Yu had a weakness, a flaw, but she could not grasp it. Buzz! Buzz buzz! 23 wrinkles appeared on Celestial Master Gong's face. Her body was old, and her beautiful black hair had turned white. Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit was even more powerful, and she was beaten until she vomited blood. Boom! A fist knocked Celestial Master Gong over, and she staggered to her feet before being knocked over by another fist. Celestial Master Gong staggered to her feet again, and Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit raised her fist again. Celestial Master Gong's knees went weak, and she suddenly fell down. I don't like talking to you. Celestial Master Yu looked at her under the foot of her huge primordial spirit, as if she had returned to the attitude of the fish-frying youth from before. She said proudly, Because you are all stupid. Celestial Master Gong raised her head. The moment she raised her head, her hair had turned white, and the 24th wrinkle appeared on her face. Her physical body had aged. Logically speaking, this was impossible. After cultivating to the God realm, their lifespan was equal to heaven's. The physical body of a god had always been maintained at its peak state. With infinite lifespan, it was impossible for them to age. The body of the god had endless lifespan. No matter how much lifespan was lost, it could not be completely lost. Even if Heavenly Venerate you cut off her lifespan, it was impossible for her to age. However, her body still inevitably aged. This was the first time since the establishment of the Heavenly Palace cultivation system. It was the first time that she encountered a divine ability that could cut off the lifespan of a god, or even a Heavenly Venerate. And this divine ability was created by Heavenly Venerate you, who had opened the divine treasure of life and death. He had opened the boundary between life and death, and the gap between the netherworld and the yang realm. This allowed the divine ability user to have endless lifespan when they cultivated to the divine realm. Now, he had comprehended the great Tao of Yudu to the extreme, and he had the ability to deprive a god of his physical lifespan. Heavenly Venerate Gong tried her best to visualize and mobilize her divine sense. She tried her best to visualize the state of her body when she was young and restore the function of her body. She was, after all, a godly king among the creators in her previous life. The creators could also live forever. They did not rely on the system of the divine treasure Heavenly Palace, but on visualizing her body so that her body would remain young forever. She still had a chance now. The moment Celestial Master Yu let down her guard, she could sneak an attack on Celestial Master Yu and turn defeat into victory. She had lived for too long. She no longer cared about the moment of glory or defeat. As long as she could win, it was worth it no matter what method she used. However, while she was secretly visualizing, she still found that her physical body was inevitably sliding toward an even older abyss. Cold sweat broke out on Celestial Master Gong's forehead, and he could not help but feel despair in his heart. Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit raised his palm and raised a finger. The finger was like a spear piercing toward her heart. Holy King Tianqiren of Yudu had never been a person who took pity on women. Countless heavens had been destroyed by him. The Earth Count's long horns were proof of his ruthlessness. Celestial Master Gong looked at the falling finger and sighed silently. This time it was most likely impossible for her to escape. At this moment, she suddenly felt the decline of her body's aging function suddenly stop. Not only that, her body began to recover its vitality and function in a straight line. Celestial Master Gong, who was lying flat in the starry sky waiting for death, immediately summoned his vital energy and moved horizontally to avoid Celestial Master Yu's attack. Heavenly Venerate Yu's primordial spirit missed its target, and suddenly had a feeling of being locked on. This feeling was very bad, as if the great Tao of Yudu had met its nemesis. It gave him an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Heavenly Venerate Yu's primordial spirit withdrew his finger, and took advantage of the moment when the 25th level Tao realm burst forth to escape this lock. He straightened his back and turned around to face the experts who had locked onto him. The corners of the young Heavenly Venerate Yu's eyes twitched as he saw the two ancient gods behind Imperial Concubine Yen and Imperial Concubine Yen. The two ancient gods, a man and a woman, both had human heads, human bodies and snake tails. They walked side by side, their snake tails swimming in the starry sky. A huge Tai Chi sand table was erected behind their heads. Imperial Concubine Yen was not the one who gave him a great sense of threat, but these two ancient gods who had handsome and strange figures. On the other side, Celestial Master Gong stood steadily. She felt that the functions of her body were rapidly recovering, which soon filled her with power and made her body more agile. You, as expected of the 9th Celestial Master of the Long Han era. Compared to the current Celestial Masters, you are indeed unmatched in talent. Concubine Yen moved her feet and separated from the two ancient gods. She formed a triangle with Celestial Master Gong and trapped Celestial Master Yu in the center. She praised. My late husband's insight is still unique and shrewd. He has long seen that the 9 of you are extraordinary and has conferred you the title of Celestial Master. As for us, the later 10 Celestial Masters, we are inferior to you. Celestial Master Gong wiped the blood from his mouth. His voice was still a little hoarse. How many talents were there in the early years of the Long Han dynasty? Each of the 9 celestial masters of the Long Han dynasty was a rare figure in history. They actually emerged at the same time. So much so that in the millions of years to come, there has never been a time when so many geniuses appeared at the same time. Heavenly Venerate Yu looked at them silently, putting on the mask of laughter and tears on his face, not saying a word. The 2 ancient Taiji gods looked at this young Heavenly Venerate with admiration. They could not help but say, "An outstanding figure like you should be able to see that you have no chance of winning. It's still not too late for you to leave. The 2 of us entered the mortal world to hone our Tao hearts, and we do not want to kill this dazzling star in the mortal world. If you are willing to leave, we will make way for you." Concubine Yantian frowned but did not speak. Empress Taiyin said, "You are in control of the great Tao of Hades and are still climbing up the Tao realm. You have not reached the end of your potential yet. But even if you reach the end of your potential, you are still no match for the 2 of us. Our Tao will suppress you. Let's go now. It's still not too late. Don't be stubborn." Ancient God Taiyang said, "Since the creation of heaven and earth, we have already been born. We have only been born today because we want to experience the mortal world and seek the path of transcendence like the 2 of you. Ever since we were born, our hands have not been stained with blood. We are both seekers of the path of Tao, and we do not want to be stained with your blood." Under the mask, Heavenly Venerate Yu blinked his dim eyes and looked at them calmly. Suddenly, his eyes curved, and the face under the mask seemed to be smiling. "I promise my friends to guard this place. So this place is the lightning pool." His primordial spirit gathered qi as a wall. With a wave of his hand, a city wall that spanned across Xuandu appeared. It was like a heavenly barrier that stood in front of the 3 of them. Yu Tianzuan raised his chin and looked a little proud. "You want to cross the lightning pool? Step over my corpse." After he said this, he did not want to say anything more to them. Concubine Yantian's gaze fell on the 2 ancient gods of Taiji. She said softly, "Brothers, now you have nothing to say, right?" The 2 ancient gods sighed in unison, and a tear fell from the corner of their eyes. They said in unison, "That's all we can do." Ancient God Taiji, Heavenly Venerate Gong, and Imperial Concubine Yen attacked almost at the same time. For auras shook the sky and earth. Shaking the entire Xiandu, they attacked Heavenly Venerate Yu at the same time. At that moment, Qin Mu had brought Butcher and the rest into the Heavenly Duke battlefield with Heavenly Venerate Yu and Godly King Lang. The Heavenly Duke's situation was already extremely critical, and he was surrounded by the 4 Heavenly Venerates and the 3 divine weapons of Heavenly Venerate Yu. Even if he shrank his corporeal body, as he increased his movement speed, he couldn't avoid getting injured again and again. At that moment, it was the will of Heavenly Tao that had been forced onto Heavenly Duke's body. The will of Heavenly Tao was extremely strong, suppressing the will of Heavenly Duke himself. The changes of Heavenly Tao had already been figured out by Heavenly Venerate Hong, Tian Fei, Divine Emperor Lang Xian, and Shi Qiluo. Heavenly Tao had no creativity, no subjectivity, only objectivity. The will of Heavenly Tao that Heavenly Tao had forced onto Heavenly Duke's body would often block the attacks and break the moves according to the moves. In terms of creativity and changes, it was far inferior to the others. This was the disadvantage of Heavenly Tao. In addition to Heavenly Venerate Hong, who knew the Heavenly Tao and Heavenly Duke thoroughly, the speed of Heavenly Duke's defeat had exceeded the expectations of others. Even Lang Xian, Qing Tianfei, and the rest hadn't expected that the eradication of Heavenly Guild would be so smooth. However, Heavenly Venerate Yu and Lang Bao's joint attack had still created some trouble for them. Adding on Qin Mu and the rest, even if they couldn't threaten their lives, it still gave them quite a headache. Shi Qiluo broke away from the battlefield and stopped them. He controlled 3 divine artifacts, Heavenly Venerate Royal, and his abilities were formidable. In addition, his body was ever-changing, and he could transform into all kinds of strange treasures. He was also a person with monstrous battle prowess. However, Heavenly Venerate Moon didn't fight him head-on and left after a strike missed. He continued to attack Heavenly Venerate Hong, Heavenly Consort Chong, and the rest, making Shi Qiluo sigh helplessly. What made Shirchilua even more exhausted was that God King Lang, this divine consciousness, had invaded the divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, and even invaded his body in an attempt to control him. He had used him as a divine weapon to attack Lang Xian and the rest. Fortunately, he was the ruler of Creator Heavenly Palace, and he had left all kinds of secret doors in the body of God weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal. Even his own body had hidden countless secret doors. When God King Lang this saw that he couldn't seize control, he still continued to harass them. It made him go a little crazy. Let me do it. God Emperor Lang Xian suddenly burst forth with his divine consciousness and clashed head-on with God King Lang Bao. His divine origin finger pierced through layers of space and forced Heavenly Venerate You out. With a wave of his sleeve, Qin Mu and the rest were pushed out of 30 layers of void space. He said indifferently, Shirchilua, go help Heavenly Venerate Hong. Shirchilua was relieved and immediately controlled his divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Royal, to kill the Heavenly Duke. Now, Divine Emperor Langxian was the strongest among the 10 Heavenly Venerates. Even if he fought against the Heavenly Duke, he was not at a disadvantage. Even Heavenly Venerate Hong, who had the strongest mana, he was much weaker than Shirchilua in terms of attack power. Heavenly Venerate You, I am your natural nemesis. Divine Emperor Langxian looked proud. He looked at Heavenly Venerate You and said calmly, your space Dao is in front of me. As long as I move my divine sense, I cannot use it. You were heavily injured for 40,000 years because of me. His gaze landed on Divine King Lang Bao again. Heavenly Venerate Lang Bao, he said leisurely. The Dao of your divine consciousness is naturally weaker than my Dao of absolute beginning. If you go against me, I'll be able to heavily injure you with the first move and take your life with the second move. If you submit to me, I'll confer you the title of Imperial Concubine. His gaze landed on Qin Mu and the rest. He frowned. Heavenly Venerate Mu, I can recognize you even if you cover your face. In front of me, even if you go through the bustling city with your bare buttocks, what's the use of covering your face? With the 5 of you working together, your abilities could only barely touch the edge of Heavenly Venerable's battle prowess and couldn't withstand a single blow. Tianshu laughed out of extreme anger and said to the others, vulgar. This beast actually said that we walk around naked. *CK his mouth. Suddenly, the Heavenly Dao trembled violently and the entire Heavenly Dao of Xian Du gathered together and surged into Heavenly Duke's body crazily. Qin Mu's heart sank, and he felt the power strengthened by the Heavenly Dao in his body drain away crazily. The Heavenly Dao of Xian Du probably knew that the situation of Heavenly Duke had reached the most critical moment, so it withdrew all the power of the Heavenly Dao that covered the entire Xian Du. It was strengthened on Heavenly Duke's body. Heavenly Duke had already reached the most dangerous moment. Heavenly Duke's power increased, but he didn't have any increase in adaptability. In that case, no matter how strong Heavenly Duke's power was, he would still die at the hands of Heavenly Venerate Hong and the rest. They would probably be defeated in this battle. Tianshu and the rest immediately felt the power of the Heavenly Dao's augmentation flying away, and their expressions changed. The reason why they hadn't been killed by the Heavenly Venerate was because of the augmentation of the power of the Heavenly Dao. Now that they had lost this power, their battle prowess would decline, and the danger would also increase greatly. At that moment, an incomparably strong throb came from afar. Qin Mu opened the vertical eye on the heart of his brows and looked over. He saw Celestial Master Gong, Imperial Concubine Yen, and Ancient God Tai Chi attacking Celestial Master Yu. Celestial Master Gong's divine whip and horn, Imperial Concubine Yan's hairpin and returning ruins, and Ancient God Tai Chi's Tai Chi sand table had all been activated. Under such an attack, Celestial Master Yu was doomed. Qin Mu's mind was muddled, and he suddenly felt a sweet taste in his throat. A mouthful of blood gushed into his mouth, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. Heavenly Duke Yu? His heart suddenly ached, and it felt like it was being cut by a knife. Suddenly, a vast aura rose from the center of Heavenly Duke's brows, and Heavenly Dao rumbled. Heavenly sounds rumbled, and Heavenly Bell tolled. Heavenly Venerate Hong, who had been besieging the Heavenly Duke, had a drastic change in expression. Shirchilua and Heavenly Concubine Chong also immediately felt that the Heavenly Duke was different from the Heavenly Duke from before. Divine Emperor Longshuan's heart trembled violently as he looked at the Heavenly Duke. At the center of the Heavenly Duke's brows, the primordial spirit of the Heavenly Duke slowly rose. In an instant, the consciousness of the Heavenly Tao dispersed, and the Heavenly Duke's consciousness took over his body. In the distance, a world-shaking sword light suddenly shot into the sky and shone on the billions of stars in Xiandu. The Heavenly Duke revealed a smile, and his grand voice reverberated in Xiandu. Heaven's will is vast and universe is small, adding a trip or two to the divine travel. At that instant, tears streamed down Qin Mu's face, and he was overjoyed. Butcher shot a cold glance at him and snorted. Great sorrow and great joy damaged Dao heart. Mu'er, you are ashamed to be a celestial venerable. Even so, the hand that held Heavenly Knife was trembling with excitement. Heavenly Duke had finally walked out of Nine Prisons platform and comprehended Heaven's will, and Founding Emperor had rushed over from the ancestral court. How could he not be excited? Heavenly Venerate you was drenched in blood. His body smashed into the starry sky like a stone that had smashed into a calm surface of water. He floated up and down, creating ripples in the starry sky. His primordial spirit was entangled by ancient god Taiji, and he immediately revealed his weakness. His physical body could not be as powerful as his primordial spirit. His primordial spirit controlled the great Tao of Hades, entering the 25th heaven of the Tao, and spreading out the 25th Hades world. Each level of his Tao skills and divine arts went deeper and deeper, each level stronger and stronger. Moreover, he was constantly comprehending the higher levels of the Tao realm. Even ancient god Taiji could not do anything to him at the moment. Even if ancient god Taiji combined into the form of Earth Count and roamed freely in his Hades world, he could at most keep up with his primordial spirit and could not hurt his primordial spirit. Although the two ancient gods could transform into various forms such as Duke of Heaven, Earth Count, and so on, they were somewhat inadequate to the Tao realm of the deep level of the great Tao of Hades of the Heavenly Tao. However, the weakness of Heavenly Venerate Yu's physical body was revealed, giving Yen Tiang Consort and Heavenly Venerate Gong an opportunity to take advantage of him. He was not a Heavenly Venerate who specialized in physical combat. He had always looked down on physical combat. Furthermore, he did not have the opportunity to fight with a human body. Yen Tiang Consort and Heavenly Venerate Gong attacked one after another. Yen Tiang Consort held a hairpin in her delicate hand. With a sway of the wind, it transformed into a sharp sword. Sword light flew about, and sinkhole great abysses appeared in front and behind Heavenly Venerate You. They tore his body in different directions, keeping him alive in the starry sky. His body was spread out in a large font. His limbs and head were stretched out, and his limbs and neck were stretched very long. Celestial Master Gong leaped up and shook the long whip in his hand, turning it into a great spear that stabbed toward his glabella. Ding! The great spear formed by the ancestral court's dragon vein stabbed into Celestial Master Yu's glabella. Blood appeared on Celestial Master Yu's glabella, and the tip of the spear pierced through his skull. Heavenly Venerate Nether struggled violently, but he was unable to break free from the sinkhole divine ability. His face could not help but turn gloomy. I tried my best. He tried his best to use his magic power to block the spear, but he was unable to do so. The dragon spear pierced into his skull bit by bit. I'm sorry. I was unable to complete your task. You let me live. I can't do it. At this moment, a mighty sword light separated Yin and Yang, forcing the two ancient gods of Taiji to separate to the left and right to avoid this world-shaking sword light. The two ancient gods were startled and immediately recognized this sword. This was Founding Emperor Qin Ye's sword. The sword of Founding Emperor was different from the sword of Founding Emperor that they had seen not long ago. This difference was not due to different sword techniques, but because of the difference in Tao realm. Previously, when they had met the Founding Emperor in the Heavenly Court, he had pierced through the Taiji diagram with one sword strike. Although he was powerful, he was not a great threat to them. However, now that the Founding Emperor had separated Yin and Yang with one sword strike, they felt an extremely terrifying threat. If the two of them were to be separated, they would be inferior to existences like the 10th Heavenly Venerate in a one-on-one fight. Only when the two of them worked together would they have boundless battle strength. It had not been long since they parted, but the Founding Emperor had actually grown to the point where he could see through their weaknesses. It was truly remarkable. After ancient god Taiji split up, Heavenly Venerate Yu's primordial spirit immediately broke free and charged toward her body. The sword light split up yin and yang, forcing back the two ancient gods. The sword light charged straight toward Heavenly Venerate Gong. It was so fast that even Heavenly Venerate Gong felt caught off guard. There seemed to be a sword wound on her back that was about to explode. That was where the sword wound left by the founding emperor in the heavenly court was. However, the founding emperor's sword wound had already been healed by goddess Taisu. Why did she feel the pain now? His sword is imprinted in my Tao heart, causing a sword wound to appear in my Tao heart. Celestial Master Gong immediately came to a realization. Founding emperor had used an extremely powerful Tao realm to heavily injure her. Taisu was able to heal such an injury, but at the same time, founding emperor had used an extremely powerful Tao heart to defeat her Tao heart. And this injury was something that Taisu was unable to heal. The injury to her Tao heart could only be healed by herself. But although her Tao heart was strong, it still had not reached founding emperor's level. At that moment, concubine Yen Tian sneered and slashed out with her sword. The sword light transformed into a sinkhole great abyss behind Celestial Master Gong. And with a swoosh, the founding emperor's shocking sword pierced into the sinkhole great abyss and disappeared. Just as concubine Yen Tian was relieved, the next moment, the sword light surged like a tide and pierced through the sinkhole great abyss one after another. The great abyss crumbled and disintegrated. She did not trap the founding emperor's sword. On the contrary, the founding emperor's sword broke through her sinkhole divine ability. The sword light shot out from the last great abyss and arrived in front of Celestial Master Gong. Celestial Master Gong whipped out her dragon spear and retreated rapidly. The dragon spear turned into a long whip that spun like a dragon to block the sword light. Sword light was everywhere before her eyes. The long whip formed by the ancestral quartz dragon vein was like a ring wrapped around a ring. It kept clanging and clanging as it collided with the carefree sword. Huge divine mountains and divine stones were sliced apart by the carefree sword. Soon, the long whip in her hand was only left with a handle. The power of the carefree sword was finally exhausted, and it whizzed away. Celestial Master Gong was drenched in sweat. She forcefully shook the handle of the whip in her hand, and the ancestral quartz dragon vein that had been cut into pieces by founding emperor's sword instantly flew over. Huge mountains quickly reassembled in her hand and turned into a divine whip. It was undamaged. Heavenly Venerate Gong felt a lingering fear in her heart. Founding emperor's sword had actually broken through the divine abilities of ancient god Taiji, imperial concubine Yen, and her, the four heavenly venerate existences. Only then had it exhausted its power. It was truly terrifying. She suddenly turned around and saw founding emperor walking over. Although the two ancient gods of Taiji were separated, yin and yang were pulling each other around in a beautiful arc. It was like yin and yang fish in the Taiji diagram were moving around each other, and founding emperor was right in the middle of the Taiji diagram. This was also an extremely wonderful point. Even though founding emperor had separated them, he had fallen into their formation. What awaited founding emperor was the ultimate attack of the two of them. Founding emperor walked in the middle of the Tai Chi diagram that was forming. He strolled leisurely as if he was completely unaware of the fierce attack that he was about to face. He raised his hand and the carefree sword flew back. His right hand held the hilt upside down, while his left hand lifted the scabbard from his waist. Ding! A melodious sword hum rang out as the carefree sword was sheathed in front of him. The sword hum was clear and melodious, and it contained the Tao rhythm of sword Tao. At that moment Celestial Master Gong happened to look over. When he heard the sword hum, his expression changed drastically, and the sword wound in his Tao heart suddenly exploded. Hihi! Her body trembled and thousands of sword wounds burst out from her body, piercing through her body and causing blood to splatter everywhere. Celestial Master Gong gave a muffled groan and shouted. The heavenly palaces shone brightly and the heavenly quartz horns were long and melodious, as they resisted the sword Tao chime. Founding Emperor raised her eyebrows and pulled out her sword. She raised it 3 inches and paused again. The sword chime burst out and the 2 sword chimes clashed. Celestial Master Gong's heavenly court crackled, and it was as if countless sword chi had swept across her heavenly palaces. Celestial Master Gong spat out blood and knelt on the ground. Concubine Yen Tian was shocked and hesitated. The sword hums of the founding emperor did not reach her ears. It was just an ordinary Dao sound, but when it reached Celestial Master Gong's ears, he was severely injured. It was truly strange. She did not know that the Dao injury on Celestial Master Gong's Dao heart was so serious. However, she did not have time to think about the reason, because Celestial Master Yu's primordial spirit had already arrived. At the same time, the Taiji diagram of the two ancient gods was completed. The Taiji diagram rotated, and at that moment, sword light lit up again. When the sword slashed down, the two ancient gods immediately felt that yin and yang were separated. The connection between them was actually broken by the founding emperor's sword. His person is burning like the radiance of the morning sun, and his sword is bright like the splendor of the moon. The two ancient gods looked at founding emperor in the Taiji diagram and exclaimed in unison, "Founding Emperor Qin Yi, we haven't seen you for a few days, and you are one step closer to attaining Dao. Congratulations, we are so envious." Suddenly, the two ancient gods shouted and activated the Taiji sand table. The sand table streaked across the sky and turned into a vast desert. The two swords of founding emperor forced them to use their companion true treasures. Ever since they were born, they had forced back Qi Tianfei and Shi Qilua in their first battle, forcing the two heavenly venerates to admit defeat and retreat. But even then, they had not used their companion true treasures. But now, the two swords of founding emperor increased the pressure on them greatly. Only by using their companion true treasures could they have a chance of winning. Founding emperor strode forward. Wind and sand filled the sky, and countless sandstorms assaulted him. Those sandstorms were planets, and the moment they came into contact with founding emperor, they transformed into countless planets that whizzed past him. Some planets crashed into him head-on. However, before these planets crashed into founding emperor, they seemed to have encountered invisible sword chi. They split apart and flew past him in two halves. Fellow Taoist. The two ancient gods of Taiji coiled around the center of the galaxy and bowed to founding emperor through the endless starry sky. Last time, the two of us saw that you were in existence about to attain the Dao, so we did not make things difficult for you. Now that we meet again, we hope that you won't make things difficult for us, fellow Taoist. Founding emperor sheathed his sword and returned the bow to the two ancient gods with the carefree sword. The countless galaxies in front of him suddenly split apart, as if pushed to the side by an invisible force. I, Qin, will bear in mind the courtesy of the two fellow Taoists. I will pay my respects to the two fellow Taoists another day. Founding emperor's tone was calm as he said, "Today, I am here to save someone. The two of you only need to pay my respects one more time. There is no reason why I can't pay my respects to the two of you one more time." The two ancient gods of Taiji looked at each other. Empress Yin said, "We have already given way to him. The first time was to respect his Dao. His Dao realm is far-reaching, and if he walks in front of us, he can be considered our senior brother. The second time there is no reason to endure." Ancient god Taiyong nodded and said, "There is indeed no reason to tolerate him this time. Fellow Taoists, please forgive us. We, brother and sister, have no choice but to offend you." Founding emperor said, "Have the two of you seen Celestial Master Gong's injury? This injury is a Dao injury. If the two of you were injured by my sword, I'm afraid you would be like her." The two ancient gods of Taiji looked at each other and smiled. "We entered this world precisely to hone our Dao hearts and comprehend the path to Dao from this surging secular world. If we were injured by fellow Taoist, it would be our fortuitous encounter." The founding emperor frowned. The power of the Taiji sand table was growing stronger. This battle was probably the most terrifying battle he had ever fought since he entered the Dao world. On the other side, Celestial Master Yu's forehead had a large hole. He staggered to his feet and his mind was in a daze. The ghost mask on his face had also been shattered by Celestial Master Gong's spear. His face was covered in blood. He grabbed the mask in a panic and tried to cover his face, but he could not put it back together. Tears fell from his face, mixed with blood, and dripped into the starry sky. The dignified Yu Tianzuan was actually beaten until he cried. Concubine Yen smiled. "You are too disrespectful to a Tianzuan. Don't underestimate the enemy." Celestial Master Gong gritted his teeth and suppressed his injuries. He tried to stand up and said in a hoarse voice, "I saw this mask in the illusion. It was the only thing his mother left for him. Yin Tianzuan's hair stood on end.